Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our land use meeting for the Board of County Commissioners. It is Tuesday, July 24th, and we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance and our prayer from our chaplain, Commissioner Stacy White.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Heavenly Father, we pray that you'll guide this board, our staff, and stakeholders this morning as we make decisions revolving around one of the most precious resources that you've given us, and that's the land here on earth. Lord, I know we'll have disagreements among stakeholders, perhaps among neighbors, and I just pray that at the end of this you will see to it that we can all continue to be good neighbors and be friendly with one another. Lord, I also pray for the members of our armed forces and for our first responders. I pray as always that you'll keep them safe and comfort them and each and every day deliver them home safely. I ask for all these blessings in your heavenly name. Amen. Amen.
Thank you, Commissioner White. That was a great prayer. First thing we're going to do on the agenda, and I'll just say before we get started, if everyone can get a seat quickly. Thank you. We'll now start. Mr. Moretta, do you have changes to the agenda?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, board members. Joe Moretta, Development Services Department, for the record. We have 3 changes to the agenda. The first one's found on agenda page 11, item B35. It's a change in spelling to correct the word in the text to home. Item number 2, agenda page 17, item G4, correction to applicant name to reflect Gardner. On number 3, agenda page 17, item G5, the applicant has requested this item be continued to August 7th board meeting starting at 9 a.m. Now moving to the agenda itself, we have several withdrawal continuances in this area as well. Item A1, personal appearance 18-0216. This application has been withdrawn. Item A2, rezoning PD 18-0574. Staff requested the item be continued to August 7th board meeting starting at 9 a.m. Item A3, personal appearance 18-0958. This application is out of order, being continued to August 7th board meeting starting at 9 a.m. Item A4, major modification 18-0567. Applications being continued to August 16th board meeting, which is a public hearing at 6 p.m. to be heard concurrently with comprehensive plan amendment CPA 17-23. Item A5, personal appearance 18-0851. This application is being continued by the applicant to August 7th Board of Commissioners meeting starting at 9 a.m. Item A6, personal appearance 18-0974. This application is being continued to August 7th board meeting starting at 9 a.m. And finally, item A7, personal appearance 18-0977. Staff request a continuance of this application to August 7th board meeting starting at 9 a.m. That concludes all the changes and continuances.
Thank you, Joe. May I have a motion to approve changes?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner White, seconded by Commissioner Christ. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please record your vote.
Motion carried 7-0.
And now we'll move to the consent agenda. May I have a motion? Motion by Commissioner Kemp, seconded by Commissioner White to approve the consent agenda. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please record your vote.
Motion carried 7-0.
Okay, anyone in the audience that has a B item, your item has been approved. And now, those who intend to present testimony, evidence, or otherwise be heard on any matter scheduled for consideration at today's meeting, please stand, raise your right hand so the clerk may swear you in.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Moretta, our first item, please.
Thank you. This brings us up to our first set of public hearings. These are the vacations of right-of-way easements and plats. Ms. Carrie Allen from Real Estate Department will make the presentation on these items.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, commissioners. For the record, Carrie Allen, Real Estate and Facility Services. Item C1 today is Vacate ID V18-0017. This is a petition by Big Ben Storage, LLC, to vacate a portion of a platted 30-foot wide drainage easement within lots 1 and 2, Block 1, according to the plat of Riverview Country Estates Unit Number 1. This is recorded in Plat Book 40, page 90 of the Public Records of Hillsborough County. This petition request is made for the purpose of relocating a platted drainage easement to accommodate development in accordance with the approved plan development. Accordingly, the petitioner is granting the county a new drainage easement over the relocated drainage infrastructure. The subject area is located at the intersection of Dixon Drive and U.S. Highway 301 in Riverview. This petition was routed to appropriate departments and agencies, and there are no objections to the vacation and relocation of this portion of the drainage easement. Staff recommends approval of this petition request.
Okay, thank you very much for that presentation. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here wishing to speak in favor of item C1? Are you in favor, sir, of C1? Anyone wishing to speak who's in opposition to item C1, please come forward. Good morning.
My name is John Murdoch. I live on 107 Dixon Drive. The main reason I'm here in opposition for this vacating of the easement, if you vacate this easement, it will be out of control of Hillsborough County. It will be in control of the owner of the property. And so far, the owner of the property has really not been really unfriendly to the neighborhood. He opened his business up June 1st. He opened his storage center up with flags and banners, U-Haul trucks, which was against the conditions in his permit. He wasn't allowed that. He opened up June 1st without a TCO or CO, without all the proper inspections. He was supposed to open it up just for a TCO to get stuff moved into the building. He opened it up to the public. Mr. White, he was involved in the drainage issue out there. He told Mr. DeCobo to repair the old system until the vacating of the easement. Well, Mr. DeCobo decided just to rip out the old easement and block the easement. And it's been blocked for 1.5 years, causing flooding in the neighborhood. Now the front drainage on Dixon Drive is blocked, and Mrs. Moore's property, water's backing up and flooding them. I have called down to the county. I've emailed the county for almost 2 years about getting the ditch cleaned out and the silt fence put up with no response. Multiple emails. I've also had public works out there. He cited Mr. DeCobo, but I had code enforcement out there. He cited Mr. DeCobo, but their actions when they turned it in was turn it into planning and growth. Nothing happened. The easements stayed blocked. The ditches have stayed blocked. The silt fences stayed down. Silt fence has been down for over 7.5 months. After the meeting in May 23rd, we asked some of the attorneys here and everything to talk to Mr. Cabrera, and he sent his inspectors out, and the inspector said, yeah, there's erosion, silt fences are down, and everything else. That was since May 23rd. Silt fences are still down, ditches are still blocked, and how can a man block a county easement for 1.5 years and have no repercussions? How can he open up for a business without a TCO or a CO, without all the inspections? How can he get power put on? Now, something is wrong in planning and growth. This man is influential. He does things before. He does
Thank
things
you,
before
sir.
he gets permits.
Thank you, sir. Your time is
Madam
up.
Chair, may I ask this gentleman a
Commissioner White,
question
you're
before he
recognized.
leaves?
Yes.
I think
And
an
possibly a
investigation
question of
is
staff
needed.
as well. Sir, I do have a couple questions for you. And I know the other neighbors are going to speak to this as well. Now, what the board is being asked to do is vacate this particular easement, but then accept a drainage easement in a different area. Does the community feel at all that that will help to alleviate the stormwater issues, or?
It would help alleviate, but who's going to be in control? That the new easement he wants to put in has 6 turns in the pipe. The other easement didn't have any turns; it was straight shot. But this new easement is going to have 6 turns, and the flow of water that comes down through there is quite a bit. And if it gets blocked, who's responsible for cleaning it out? If you vacate the easement, Hillsborough County ain't responsible anymore. It'd be up to him. And he doesn't care about flooding us out. He's already done that. You know, if he cared about us, he'd fix the drainage. He won't.
So the county would no longer be responsible for the vacated easement, but what about the new easement? Can staff give the board and the community some information on
Yes.
the proposed new easement?
Yes, the new easement will be a drainage easement dedicated to the county. It will allow for, in our opinion, a better conveyance of stormwater from the east to the west out to 301, and will facilitate improvement of the prior easement, which I understand had become less than optimal functionally, based on the pipe having some blockage to it. The county will get a new, if this item is approved, the county will get a new drainage easement to replace the existing one with a slightly different alignment to it, along the southern side of the property where it exists today.
Okay, thanks for that information. I want to hear from the rest of the neighbors and go from there.
Does,
But thank
so
you
what
for
you're
that
saying
information.
is the county would still be in control of the drainage easement?
Correct.
The new drainage
We
easement?
would still have a drainage easement.
Okay,
That's correct.
sir, that should clear up,
This
a
has to be an
concern you had.
investigation, though, in the planning and growth, in the connection with planning and growth.
Okay,
and-
sir, your time has expired.
Right.
Okay, thank you very much. Next speaker?
I apologize, Commissioners. The petitioner is here. He was not here when asked if there was anyone in favor of the petition. I just wanted to let you know.
Okay, he'll be allowed to speak. Let me take these and then we'll go back to him. Okay, yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Kathy Moore, 10603 Dixon Drive. My property adjoins this property, and the easement is, whenever it is blocked, my property is the one that's most damaged by this, but also when it is blocked and it runs into Dixon Drive and causes major backup of traffic and dangerous for people to drive in and stuff. And I'm really pleased to see with the way that things are going as far as the easement. Glad to hear that the county will be responsible for it if it's blocked up and such. My thing is, I'm very disappointed that it's taken, I came here the first time, 2015, to tell you that there was a problem, and it was just like pushed around and ignored, and we were flooded a couple of times in the interim and stuff, and it makes the average citizen feel like that there's really no concern for what's going on. And originally, it was going to be completely closed off, and if we hadn't have started coming to these meetings and raising our concern about this, it would have been completely closed off, and our street would have been completely flooded. So if, I know this is probably maybe not the thing, but just to let you all know that I think there needs to be maybe a little bit better way for the public to maybe come to these meetings, more notification, not notification, but an easier way for them to understand what's going on and to know the procedure, and for maybe whenever a citizen does get up there and say, we definitely have a problem, that y'all put a red star by that or something and say that's something that maybe needs to be checked on a little bit more if a resident's complaining about it. Because it would have saved us taxpayers a whole lot of money and saved y'all a whole lot of aggravation and staff a whole lot of frustration if this would have been taken care of back in 2015 instead of letting it go this far. But anyhow, that's my concern too, is getting it cleaned out. But from what this gentleman said, sounds like we should have that under control. So I'm hoping that's all the way it's going to go. And so I hope y'all don't have to see me up here anymore. So, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next speaker.
Good morning. My name is Norsky Mendez, 10607 Dixon Drive. We're the second house from the property in question. And my main concern is that we have been flooded before. And then with this past heavy rain that we had this weekend, we did get some flooding also. So if you guys can please take a look at that and see what can be done to resolve it. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Next speaker in opposition to item C1.
I'm Byron Moore. I live at 10603 Dixon Drive, Riverview, and I have two pictures. And after you're able to see those pictures, I'll point out what I want to point out.
Okay,
Can I
thank
do
you.
that?
You can, over to the Elmo, and there's also a microphone over there that you can use.
What? Go ahead. Okay, good.
Yes,
Picture
sir.
on the left, which I guess is everybody's left. Yeah, mine. That picture was taken July the 9th after a 2.5-inch rain. The one on the right was taken yesterday after a 1.5-inch rain. I'm located at where my portion of the easement connects Mr. DeCoba's portion of the easement. And all I'm trying to do is just let you know that there is a need for drainage. Take that into consideration when you're deliberating. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does that conclude your time, sir? Okay, thank you. Next speaker in opposition to item C1.
I've got a thumb drive here I'd like for you to plug in, please.
You have pictures to put on the Elmo also? Oh, thumb drive, okay. Sir, we have a policy here that we need to see videos 24 hours before they're to be shown, just to review them. Pardon me?
We were not told that. The county attorney called, the assistant attorney called me last week, and I told him I was going to present this.
Okay.
It's very important that you see this.
Okay, I'll allow it, sir, but if there's anything in there that's not acceptable, I'll have to stop it.
Very, very acceptable.
Okay. How long is the video?
20 seconds, I believe.
Okay. But we do have that policy, and for everyone in the audience, you have to submit a video to our communications department 24 hours before.
I know I'm out of order, but.
Sir, who did you speak with? You said you spoke to the...
Someone from the county called me and said they were an assistant attorney and told us we couldn't present evidence in the second piece of this hearing.
Oh, sorry, sir, that was me with regard to the rezoning
Right.
or zoning modification. And I did not have any awareness of your intention to present the video.
I told you that I had a stack of emails and I had a video and pictures. The video speaks for itself.
Well, with that request, I was speaking with regard to the modification to the zoning. I wasn't aware that you intended to present that for this item.
Everything that you've just heard here, this sums it up in 20 seconds.
Okay, so let's come to a decision here. We do have a rule on the 24 hours, so if it's okay with the fellow commissioners, if we are going to show the video, which I'm okay with for 20 seconds, but we need a motion to waive the rules. Okay, we have a motion and a second to waive the rules. Please record your votes.
Second was from
White.
White, I'm sorry, yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Okay.
Thank you. Can you play it?
Video, you guys? Is there audio?
Barely. It's just somebody driving down the road.
Okay.
For the record, my name is Brent Davis. I live at 10609 Dixon Drive. And this video was shot driving down Dixon Drive. There's Mr. DeCabo's Big Bend storage project right there. Okay? That's the amount of water that's running off of it when this video was taken. And this shows you Dixon Drive. This is what everybody's concerned about right here. You know, when we're talking about flooding, you saw what Mr. Moore showed the back of his property, but this is actually Dixon Drive. Now, God forbid we get a 4 or 5 inch rain, you can see the water flowing right off of his property, right directly onto Dixon Drive, which I do not believe that's supposed to happen either. And you can see the condition of the berm along there. This is what that we've been stuck with by Mr. Cobo. So obviously he has very little concern for those of us on Dixon Drive. Okay.
Okay, and so I'm going to ask staff again. So what you said earlier about the new stormwater easement, that is going to remedy
the new
this
stormwater
issue.
easement will facilitate a more functional
Flow of
drainage
water.
flow of water. It is on the other side of the lot. I believe that was on the north side of the
That's correct.
property.
That's on the north side.
The drainage easement is on the south side, so it will take water through a different path. And I believe that area of the site is undeveloped right now. The south side.
And will alleviate
Not
the
been
flooding?
redeveloped.
It'll alleviate the flooding?
It will alleviate the flooding to some degree. I think we know that there are larger issues out there. A lot of that video that was shown was actually county and state drainage ditches along the road, but it will improve the functioning of the stormwater on the site and the conveyance of stormwater from the east to the west.
To some degree,
Madam Chair.
but not a full remedy of the flooding.
And just to let you know, the drainage has already been put in. Mr. DeCobo has already put it in. So whether you approve or not, it's already done. I mean, it's there. It just needs to be opened up. It's blocked off.
Well, he hasn't gotten a permit to do this, what we're approving today.
Need I
has
say
he?
more?
Correct, that's correct.
So, I mean, he hasn't done it yet because he hasn't had
And
the
if you
permit
also-
to do it. Is that correct?
That's correct. That area of the site where the drainage easement vacation and rededication is requested by the conditions of these existing zoning can't be developed unless and until the drainage easement is realigned, which is this item today.
Right, so if he has done some work, it's not this work we're approving today.
Yeah, well, it's completed. So that tells you how that works. And if you also notice at the end of that video, there was an issue raised about the U-Haul trucks and about the banners that were clearly flying with the U-Haul trucks parked right there. So again, total disregard for compliance by Mr. DeCobo. That's the bottom line. Let's see here. Yeah, so that pretty well covers that part of it. But more importantly, I'm not here just to throw Mr. DeCobo under the bus. I'm here to ask what happened. I mean, the county's supposed to be looking out for our rights here, and they are not. There's been no inspections. The man's been operating without a TCO. He's been in business from the very beginning with the U-Haul trucks and everything that he was told he couldn't have. You know, where's the inspection process here? Where's the county looking out for those of us that have been paying the taxes there for 45 years? They're not. And you see the result. We're flooded at the end of our street. And it's only going to get worse. We're right in the middle of hurricane season now. So I'm asking, where is the county's oversight? There's a serious problem here. There really is. And you, as a Board of County Commissioners, need to be looking into what's going on here. Is it happening all over the place? Or is it just here? I don't know. But I can tell you that it's happening here. And we're getting stonewalled at every turn. And I've got a stack of emails here to back that up. I know you don't have time to look at all that. But you've got a serious problem here that needs to be addressed. And it's probably not just this gentleman and not just this project, but it certainly is applicable to us on Dixon Drive. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And just to let you know, that's why we have public hearings, so we can hear all this information and make sure that before we make any decision that we have the citizens' interests at heart.
Well,
Okay?
we've been here a lot of times, and nobody's come out to see us like they promised.
Okay,
One of the
thank you.
commissioners promised that, didn't happen.
Thank you, sir. Now, anyone here wishing to speak?
Madam Chair.
Well, there's someone ahead of you. Did you want to speak now with him?
Yeah,
or
right now.
Commissioner
Staff.
Miller, you're recognized.
Staff, I mean, that was atrocious what we just saw. and you said it's going to somewhat alleviate the problem out there. And as the water was going down, it was bubbling at the top of the water. I mean, is this going to alleviate the problem at all? Is this going to take some of the water someplace else? We're still going to have flooding out there? What's going on?
So the drainage easement will take the stormwater from the site. It's my understanding that there's been a lot of contact with this site, both from Development Services staff and Public Works staff regarding the condition of the drainage ditches along Dixon Drive. The construction of the site, the reconstruction of the stormwater system and the drainage will not, it will improve the flow of water from, I think what you're seeing is the water comes from the west, from the east, where the residents live, across the subject site, and flows to the west, somewhat to Dixon, but ultimately it goes out to the west to 301. The new stormwater system that will accompany the development of the site will improve the flow of stormwater from the site to the drainage ditches. I can't say that it will solve all the problems that exist on Dixon Drive. I understand that there have been historical problems out there for some time, but as to the development of this site, it will improve the stormwater condition and bring the stormwater system up to today's standards.
Well, having said that, I still don't think that the citizens in that area are believing what you're saying we're doing. I don't know if anyone's met with them. I don't know if anyone's sat down and talked with them about it's going to alleviate some of the issues out there, some of the problems, and then we're hearing that the applicant has done some work and have not pulled permits and all those kind of things. I don't think we're ready to do this. I'm going to ask for continuance. I'm going to make a motion that we continue this until staff or someone goes out there, talk to the citizens, have a good look at what's going on, and not somewhat alleviate the problem, but alleviate the problem. So my motion is to continue this until staff.
And for the record, Commissioners, I just want to correct.
Okay,
I would like to correct some statements that were made on the record. My staff has been out there many times. My staff has spoken with the citizens many times. The issue of the occupancy of the building without a CO was brought to our attention, and we took action and cited them for that. So I know that the citizens are frustrated with the situation out there. I do want the board to know that this is not something that we have not paid any attention to. We've paid a lot of attention to this. We've put a lot of time into trying to address the issue that came in that was not a easy situation from the get-go, both from the development of the site and the historic drainage issues that have occurred in that area independent of the development of this site.
So, Mr. Gormley, I'm not jumping on your staff at all. I'm just saying that either your staff or someone from Hillsborough County needs to go out there, see what's going on, make sure that everything is in place to alleviate this issue, and then bring it back so we can get assurance that everything is taken care of. That's all I'm asking.
Yes, sir.
Okay. We do have a motion to continue on this second, but before we are still in the middle of this public hearing, and we do have a speaker and who is in favor of item C1. If you'd like to come forward, you'll have 3 minutes.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Albert.
Have you been
Copel.
sworn in?
No, I have not.
Okay.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I apologize for being delayed, weather and everything else. Just flew in from Key West. So, first of all, everything that's been done on that site has been permitted. The drainage easement that was there that belonged originally from the previous owners was a easement that was completely blocked up. We have since, with planning development or development services, designed a bypass, which is about a 32 by 21 inch pipe that is going to bring the water from Mrs. Moore's on out to 301, alleviating the issue that you saw on those two pictures. That has not been opened up yet because we still have to finish that portion of that pipe. So Mrs. Moore's flooding back there will be addressed shortly. Nothing Commissioner Miller, nothing on that site has been done without a permit. I've got every permit in sight. I've got it on site. We've had erosion control issues, and we've addressed it. The video you saw here was, I don't know when, but it had to have been longer than 3 or 4 weeks ago, because today we have buildings that are along Dixon and now along the backside of what is adjacent to Mrs. Moore's property, which is the east side. The buildings are in place and they are permitted. Okay, we just don't build buildings because we want to build buildings with no permits or acknowledgement to the county. The easement that we're asking for simply is, there was no easement there. The property that we purchased was leveled. There's no way of Mrs. Moore's property coming in here. And she's the only one that is taking the blunt of the whole thing, because her abutting neighbors to the east have basically filled in their easement. So all the water is going to go to the low area, which is the only property that has the easement drainage or swell is Mrs. Moore's. Once we open up this pipe, that flooding won't occur because it's been approved. The county plans review, site review has been approved for that pipe. It will bring that water and bring it out to 301, and she won't have that flooding there anymore. So we're just in the midst of getting that opened up to alleviate that. In fact, it may even be already opened up. It may not be, only because of those pictures were taken yesterday. So that video is not even an acknowledgement of what's there today. The buildings along Dixon are built, the walls are up, and when we had that erosion there, environmental came in and we ended up putting, they asked us to put this matting, a geotech matting, to help the erosion control, which we did. Now, the project has taken longer than we had because we did come in for a modification of PRS to the site, which delayed all the construction because we had to resubmit everything to the county, and it took almost approximately 6 months to do that.
Sorry, your time's up.
All right.
Thank you. Commissioner White, you're recognized. And we are closing the public hearing. Thank you. You're recognized, Commissioner White.
Thank you. Do we have a stormwater engineer in the room?
I was just texting Mr. Cabrera, who's been involved with this project, is out today. I've asked somebody to come down to speak to this, and
Yeah.
trying to get her down.
Yeah. And I have a question for you, or perhaps Ms. Lundgren. And I'm just, to make it easy, I'm just going to refer to item numbers as they appear on today's agenda. Is it possible, you know, I know one has already been continued, and there's a motion to continue another one. Can items C1 and G5 be heard as related items?
We can put them on the agenda as related items, certainly.
Yeah, that would be in the H section of some future agenda, right? Section H,
Yes.
generally.
Currently, item G5 has been continued to August 7th.
Right. So I'm gonna make a motion to amend. My staff's been working on this Dixon Road issue for at least a year. There are a lot of complexities here with respect to this matter. I see item C1 and G5 as being closely related, so I'd like to see them traveling together. So I'm going to make a motion to amend such that today's item C1 and today's item G5 come back as related items.
And that would be at the August 7th land use meeting?
That's correct, 9 a.m.
Okay. Okay, so we have a motion to amend by Commissioner White, seconded by Commissioner Chris. Commissioner Kemp, do you want to speak to the amendment?
No, I don't want to speak.
Okay, well, go ahead and speak. You're recognized.
There are many places in our county that have historic water issues. This sounds like stormwater issues. It sounds like one of them I was going to ask for the same thing, a stormwater engineer if we had one. And I think we all want to reach the same results, which is not having a video like that and not having the flooding that's down there. And I'm just wondering if this fix is not satisfactory, what happens then? Where do we go with all? I understand it's been being worked on, but let's say that this fix comes into play And we still have significant issues, not only because of this development, but because also of historic issues with how do we proceed? How does that?
We will be coordinating with the Public Works Department. They're aware of some of the issues out there. We're going to have them go out and take a look as well at the situation and try to advise on what can be done holistically for the area, both for this development that we have regulatory control over and the surrounding area conditions, and see if there's things that can be done to alleviate some of those flooding. So we're going to look at it both from the development side and from the public infrastructure side. So the site itself is subject to our stormwater technical manual, our stormwater technical design requirements that will ensure that the flow of water leaving the site doesn't increase in the post-development stage from the pre-development stage. However, what we want to look at as well is where's that water go when it leaves the site, and make sure that there's some area for that to discharge away from the Dixon Road area.
And I do think the continuance will allow staff more time to go out and assess, so they'll be prepared at the August 7th land use meeting. Is that okay? Commissioner Chris, you recognize.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I share the same concern as the good Commissioner Miller, and I see this as a bigger issue here. I know that the applicant's trying to make every effort to cover the displacement, and we all don't have to be rocket scientists to know that when you put a big impervious structure on a piece of property, you displace water. And whether those are old pictures or new pictures, the bottom line is there's an issue there with water. And we're trying to guesstimate that this Band-Aid is going to fix the problem. I would rather take a look at the bigger picture as well and see how we handle that water upstream and downstream, because our system in Hillsborough County isn't the most efficient. We rely on a system of culverts, pipes, and public and private land for water to travel across until it dissipates into the bay. And there's sometimes obstacles along the way that causes backup. We could very simply move that water from this site to another site and see the problem exist greater at another location. So, I would really like us to have the engineers take a closer look at this. I'm concerned for the citizens. They've got to live with this. It's going to make it difficult for emergency vehicles to get in and out of there. And I think we need to take a look at the bigger picture.
Yes, sir, we'll do it.
Thank you. Commissioner White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll make this very brief. As staff is working with the citizens on Dixon Road, I would like to have staff address this quote, historical issue, because I suspect that the residents will tell you that, in the 80s and perhaps the 90s, before all this development started around them, they probably weren't experiencing issues like this. So something's gone wrong in the system somewhere. I just want to make sure that we're not confusing the word historic or historical with this being some kind of a natural phenomenon. Because I do suspect that it's a man-made phenomenon somewhere, in the system. So I want to see us work through that issue, and I want to ask the citizens to stick around. David from my office is going to meet with you and talk about these ongoing operational issues with regards to the culverts and things like that. He'll probably meet you in the lobby after we address this item. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We do have an amendment to the motion by Commissioner White, seconded by Commissioner Chris. Is there any further discussion on the amendment to the motion? Seeing no further discussion, please record your vote on the amendment.
Motion carried 7-0.
Okay, we are now back on the motion as amended by Commissioner Miller, seconded by Commissioner Kemp. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please record your vote.
Motion carried 7-0.
Okay, very good. Thank you all. Next item, C2.
Item C2 today is Vacate ID V18-0025. This is a petition by Cornergate Development, LLC, to vacate the entire plat of Americana Subdivision, which is recorded in Plat Book 45, page 10 of the Public Records of Hillsborough County. The petitioner is also requesting that the county partially release 3 existing county drainage easements located within the lands adjoining the Americana Subdivision plat. This petition request is made for the purpose of incorporating the Americana Subdivision plat property and adjoining lands into the new Cornergate Subdivision Phase 1 plat. New public drainage easements will be provided as part of the new plat. The subject area is located east of Sheldon Road, west of Veterans Expressway, and north of Linebaugh Avenue in Tampa. The petition was routed to appropriate departments and agencies, and there are no objections to the vacation of the plat or the partial release of the existing drainage easements. Staff recommends approval of this petition request.
Okay, thank you very much for that presentation on item C2. We will now open the public hearing. Is there anyone here wishing to speak in favor of item C2? Anyone here wishing to speak in opposition to item C2? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Board action. Motion by Commissioner White, second by Commissioner Higginbotham. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please record your vote.
Motion carried 7-0.
Okay, next item. Mr. Moretta, C3.
Item C3 is Vacate ID V17-0030. This is a petition by Palanasamy Rathanasamy, Kalyana Mathi Rathanasamy, to vacate a portion of unimproved platted right-of-way known as Clayton Street. The subject area is located east of South Parsons Avenue and south of East Brandon Boulevard in Brandon. This petition request is made for the purpose of providing maintenance and security to a dead-end right-of-way that is being used by transients and littered with trash, vehicles, and other items. This petition was routed to appropriate departments and agencies, and they have no objections to the vacation of this portion of right-of-way. The county has received a verbal objection from Leela Lillyquist, the property owner at 303 South Parsons Avenue, north of the petitioner's property. Ms. Lillyquist objects to the vacating on the basis that the process of vacating right-of-way is unfair. The petitioners provided false reasons for their basis for vacating. The school north of the petitioner's property, Tampa Bay Heat, Inc., uses the right-of-way for parking, and the subject right-of-way is needed as part of the Brandon Corridors and Mixed-Use Centers pilot project. The county has reviewed these concerns and determined that this portion of the right-of-way serves no public benefit. The portion to be vacated is not part of the Brandon Corridors and Mixed-Use Centers pilot project, and it is highly unlikely that it will be used as a connection due to prior vacating along Clayton Street and the fact that a necessary segment has not been dedicated to the county. Additionally, adequate land along Parsons Avenue has been preserved should the county revive the previously proposed widening project. We have also received letters in support of the vacating from Charles Jennings, the property owner at 308 Elizabeth Street, and Tampa Bay Heat, Inc., the tenant at 307 South Parsons Avenue. Staff recommends approval of this petition request.
Okay, thank you very much for that presentation. We will now open the public hearing. Anyone here wishing to speak in favor of item C3, please come forward. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Commissioners. I have pictures, so I will...
And if you please identify yourself. And have you been
my
sworn?
name is Palanisamy Ratnasamy.
Have you been sworn in?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
thank you. And there is a microphone, yes.
My name is Palanisamy Ratnasamy. I'm a physician. My wife and I have lived and worked in the Brandon area since 1985. And specifically have owned the property 315 South Parsons since '89. We have used, the main purpose of this property is for medical offices and a hair salon. On the picture you can see that undeveloped right-of-way is this, and the buildings are on the left. Is the right, and our offices are on the left. Because the neighboring properties have had their respective portions of the right-of-way vacated, the right-of-way is a fenced-in dead end, providing ingress and egress access only to our rear parking lot here on the back. and access for trash collection here. We are respectfully requesting the county vacate because vagrant, trash, and vehicle parking on the right-of-way are preventing our use of our property. Because the right-of-way is open, we deal with people dumping trash. Here are a few examples. Mattress was dumped. Metal, raw sheet, and what looks like a drain. Other metal and trash. I can also attest that I see people hanging out and drinking alcohol in the right of way, and many times I have picked up bottles of beer there. In addition to the vagrants and trash, we also have people parking in the right of way, as shown here. This is our building, and these are the parked cars in the right of way. In addition to this photo was taken in the middle of the afternoon on a busy day. As you can see on the right, vehicles are parked on the right of way, blocking access to the back. When the trash truck comes, and if they see this vehicle parked, they don't pick up the dumpster, and the trash gets collected and it overflows. So for all these reasons, I would request the county to vacate the property for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else here wishing to speak in favor of item C3? Please come forward. Anyone here wishing to speak in opposition to item C3? Please come forward. Good morning.
Good morning. I have not been sworn in.
Okay, thank you.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Lila Lilyquist, Brandon, Florida. I would like to start by passing a newspaper article around for each of you to observe and a schematic of an overview of this property in relation to Brandon Regional Hospital.
Okay, if you want to give those to the clerk,
Yeah.
he'll pass them out for you.
The pictures you're looking at are the properties owned by Hillsborough, or by the hospital authority behind that property, my old strip mall that I was in for 23 years. For 23 years, I've never seen a vehicle abandoned on that property. I've never seen a vagrant sleeping on that property. I have not seen a substantial amount of litter on that property. So I'll just read what I sent to Curie with real estate and other concerned citizens of Hillsborough County and county commissioners. This letter is to inform you that I have grave concerns in regards of the vacating of property to Mr. and Mrs. Sammy. I'm not going to pronounce his first name because that's Sammy. Mm-hmm. First, there is a blatant conflict of interest. The Brandon Regional Hospital master plan includes this parcel. The hospital owns the land directly behind the strip mall and most likely includes the last statement in the request. Adjacent properties successfully petitioning vacating of their portion of the right-of-way. Just like insider trading, the retired former chief of staff of Brandon Regional sees the potential for making a windfall of property donated by our forefathers for improving transportation in Brandon, in our community. Second, the purpose of this request, to provide maintenance and security of the described unimproved right-of-way, which is currently being used by vagrants and littered with trash and vehicles. This statement is incorrect. In the 23 years, my business, Nature's Health Foods, has been a direct neighbor to this property. I've never witnessed vagrants, trash, vehicles, and other items interfering with the use of the petitioner's property. What I have witnessed is the petitioner's waste management container being on the property, which the county is now being asked to vacate. Third, when I questioned why the county could not sell the property to the petitioner, I was told the county does not allow the sale of vacant properties to the general public. Now, I wonder why the family that donated the property to the county has not been offered the property. In conclusion, I was told by you that the planning department has been given approval for this vacating petition, has given approval. My belief is that the county taxpayers would be very upset that our county real estate representatives would reward a petitioner with an unearned financial gain to the tune of about $225,000. That's the basic appraised value of that property. In conclusion, I was told by you, I read that, so our meeting is to here today. My concern is that the waste dumpster was moved last week to his property. signs went up 2 weeks ago, and the pictures you saw earlier were the homeschoolers that were parking along the fence. What he didn't show you was the relationship between his office and a direct way for that waste management truck to go on the side of the building, because they do not block the parking. They had an agreement for years and years to be able to park there. So you're not seeing the full picture.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition to item C3? We'll now close the public hearing and we'll have board discussion. Motion by Commissioner Hagan, seconded by Commissioner Higginbotham and White. Commissioner Kemp, you're recognized.
Thank you. I'll not be supporting this. I think I realize that the contiguous to the east parts of what was a corridor have already been vacated. I think that was a mistake that was made in the past. If nothing else, I think we need to preserve these right-of-ways for trails, bike and pedestrian, for the future. I would like to see that. And again, realizing that right-of-way has been vacated, I still think there might be opportunities for that in the future. It hasn't been developed. And I also don't understand why, if this is if the county could make a benefit from this in the future in some other way, as opposed to a private landowner, and it is the county land, I don't see a reason that we should be vacating this in favor of this private landowner.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a motion by Commissioner Hagan, seconded by Commissioner Higginbotham and White. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please record your vote.
Motion carried 4-3. Commissioners Christ, Kemp, and Miller voted no.
Okay, thank you very much. We are now on the E items. Mr. Moreta.
Thank you, Commissioner. This takes us to the E items. These are personal appearance for planned developments. The first one is E1, application number PRS 18-0848, located on the east side of Henderson Road, southeast of Veterans Expressway. This is a 71-acre site. It was approved for planned development in 1990. The applicant is asking for a similar edit to the development standards. There was one approved previously that was similar. It's a reduction in the building height from 100 to 90 feet for building site number 7, and to reduce the minimum front yard setback along Henderson from 30 to 14. As we found with the previous case, staff feels that the width of the right-of-way in front of this development on Henderson Road, which varies between 100 and 130 feet, offsets the requested edit to the development standards, and we are recommending approval subject to conditions. And the uses are office and retail. It's a rather large project that's been there for some while, and they're just getting to developing this component. So we are recommending approval with conditions.
Thank you very much for that explanation. And you're the applicant?
Yes, ma'am. Clayton Bricklemeyer, Bricklemeyer Law Group, 601 North Ashley Drive. Representing the applicant. Joe did a very good job of talking about this. We've still got a very substantial buffer. I'm excited to tell you that we are asking for this because we are getting ready to actually do something and build an office building on this site, and this is to accommodate the exact design that the end user wanted to have. So it's an exciting project, and we would ask for your approval.
Great, thank you very much. We'll now move into the public hearing. Is there anyone here wishing to speak in favor of item E1? Anyone here to speak in opposition to item E1? Okay, motion by Commissioner Miller, seconded by Commissioner Kemp to approve item E1. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please record your vote.
Motion carried 6-0.
Thank you, Commissioners. This brings us to item E2. This is personal appearance 18-0949. This takes us to 10909 Sheldon Road on a 4-acre parcel. Commissioners, this proposal is not for any additional entitlements. It's for an internal redesign of building placement. All the perimeter buffers are anticipated to stay in the same area. The applicant has presented us with an amended site plan. They're proposing to add an additional access point along their western property line. Staff has reviewed the relocated building placements, and we are recommending approval with conditions.
Okay. Thank you very much for that explanation. On item E2, is the applicant here? You'd like to come forward for remarks or presentation? You have 15 minutes. Have you been sworn in?
Yes.
Okay. And do you have materials? Okay. If you just give it to the clerk, he'll pass them out for you. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Brian Surak. I'm with Clearview Land Design, and I represent the applicant on this project. What I'm handing out is just the updated site plan that we sent to the county yesterday. And other than that, I concur with the staff's recommendation.
Okay.
And here for any
Thank you very
questions.
much. Is staff aware of this?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure. Thank you. We are in public hearing. We'll open that public hearing, see if anyone here is in favor of item E2. Like to come forward. Anyone here to be in opposition to item E2? Like to speak? Okay. Motion by Commissioner Miller, second by Commissioner Kemp. Is there any further discussion or questions? Seeing none, please record your vote.
Motion carried 6-0.
Thank you. This brings us to item E3, personal appearance 18-0950. This takes us to 19120 Jurassic Road and 18805 Noble Caspain Drive. Commissioners, this is a 17-acre parcel. It's permitted for 199 dwelling units, townhomes, or multifamily product. The applicant is requesting to modify a condition that was placed in the original rezoning to modify the screening condition. The screening condition it affects the property project boundary along the west, and that screening condition required that the planting that is associated with the buffer and screening be planted on the outside of the fence as opposed to the inside of the fence. At that time, that was a desired organization of that condition. Since then, factors in the area have changed. The adjacent property owner has no objection to reversing that order and placing the trees behind the fence, which would have the fence along the perimeter and the trees behind the fence on the applicant's property. And they have a letter in support. Staff reviewed it, and we are recommending approval with conditions.
Great. Thank you very much. Is the applicant here? Good morning. Have you
Good
been
morning.
sworn in?
Yes, I have.
Thank you.
Tom Deal, Clearview Land Design, 1213 East 6th Avenue. Joe and Mr. Moretta presented it perfectly.
He does a great
As simple
job.
as it gets.
Thank you.
Here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Great. We'll now open the public hearing on item E3. Is there anyone here wishing to speak in favor of item E3? Anyone here speak in opposition to item E3? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Board action. Motion by Commissioner Higginbotham, second by Commissioner Miller to approve item E3. Is there any further discussion or questions? Seeing none, please record your vote.
Motion carried 5-0.
Thank you, Commissioners. This brings us to item E4 in Sonona, Sassa. This is personal appearance 18-0953. It's located on the southeast corner of Joey Road and Sorbonne Lane on the northeast corner of Williams Road and Papillon Boulevard. This request is to modify a zoning that was approved in 1999. It's a minor modification to reduce a buffer width along Williams Road to accommodate a turn lane and also to modify transportation conditions that relate to the access improvements which are being updated. Our transportation staff has reviewed the transportation conditions and has recommended approval of the proposed edits. And the reduction in buffer width we feel is still compatible and will allow for the turn lane which is needed to accommodate the access improvements. Staff is recommending approval with conditions.
Thank you very much, Joe. It's the applicant here. Good morning.
Good morning,
You've been
Commissioners.
sworn in?
Yes, I have.
Oh,
My name
sorry.
is Andrew Island. I'm with Stantec Consulting, representing the applicant in my homes. Again, staff did an excellent job covering the nature of the application. We are requesting a very straightforward revision to the previously approved zoning plan. The good news is the reason we're here is, again, because something good is happening. This subdivision was originally planned in 3 phases, 2 phases of which were constructed. The infrastructure is in. The lots have been platted, and about half of the lots, roughly, are occupied. The remaining 3rd phase did not move forward before the permits expired because of the downturn. MI Homes has bought the property and is actively moving forward. And The only thing that's changed is Hillsborough County's rules have changed, so a left turn lane into the property is now required, and we've simply asked to reduce the required buffer width to make room for the required turn lane. So we are in agreement with all of staff's recommendations.
Great, thank you very much. We will now open the public hearing on item E4. Is there anyone here wishing to speak in favor of item E4? Anyone here speak in opposition? Item E4. Okay, close the public hearing. Board action. Motion by Commissioner Miller, second by Commissioner White. Is there any further discussion or questions? Seeing none, please record your vote.
Motion carried 7-0.
Okay, next item.
Next item is E5, personal appearance 18-0960. This takes us to Brandon on a 9.7 acre site on the north side of Bloomingdale Avenue, west of Providence Road, and east of Simpson Road. Commissioners, this particular plan development was approved for a self-storage facility. As part of the process of rezoning the site, conditions were agreed to that required architectural elements. During that time, the architectural elements weren't calibrated with respect to height. This is a height increase from 25 to 30 feet to allow the architectural design to be built as was presented in the original proposal. Staff has reviewed it, and we are recommending approval with conditions.
Thank you very much for that explanation on item E5. It's the applicant here. Good morning.
Good morning, Todd Pressman, 334 East Lake Road, number 102 in Palm Harbor, Florida. This is really a very minor change. It's really just an aesthetic element that Joe has indicated was on the original plans, but just did not match up with one of the many conditions. We've had no opposition from anyone in the public or any of the agencies. It affects just a very, very small portion of this project. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. We now open the public hearing on item E5. Is there anyone here wishing to speak in favor of item E5? Anyone here to speak in opposition to item E5? Second. Okay, motion by Commissioner Miller, second by Commissioner White. Is there any further discussion or questions? Seeing none, please record your vote.
Motion carried 7-0.
Next item.
Next item is E6, personal appearance 18-0965, located on the north side of West Waters Avenue, west of Henderson Road and 12 Oaks Boulevard. This is a plan development that was approved originally in 1975. The applicants are requesting for two modifications. One is to recognize an existing right-in, right-out on 12 Oaks, and also to ask for a cross-access, which is internal to the site, which will lead to internal access to a out parcel that's part of this plan development. Staff is recommending approval of those transportation edits with conditions.
Okay, thank you very much. Is the applicant here for item E6? Good morning. You've been sworn in?
I have not.
Okay.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Matthew Campo, Campo Engineering, 1725 East 5th Avenue. Just want to, pretty straightforward, but just want to touch on one thing. The access points that we're requesting actually are there today, so they exist. But they were not on the original PD plan from the 80s. So essentially, this particular request, cleans up that, so it allows us to continue with the development of the parcel. I'm available for any questions.
Very good. Thank you. We'll now open the public hearing on item E6. Is there anyone here wishing to speak in favor of item E6? Anyone to speak in opposition to item E6? Close the public hearing. Board action. Motion by Commissioner Miller, seconded by Commissioner Kemp to approve item E6. Seeing no further discussion, please record your vote.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you. That brings us to item E7, personal appearance 18-0972, located on the south side of Fishhawk Boulevard, east of Boyette Road, and on the east side of Boyette Road, south of Fishhawk Boulevard. The applicants are requesting for two modifications to the original plan development that was approved in 1988. The first one is to permit a 7-foot encroachment into a 15-foot required scenic corridor buffer. They're requesting that encroachment to allow for additional parking. They're proposing to keep the screening as required by the scenic corridor, but to allow that encroachment. They're also asking to waive a requirement for evergreen plantings, which are required to go on fencing that's associated with the retention pond. This is a non-residential project. That retention pond is located in an area of the site which will not be widely viewed from the street. It will mainly be viewed by those who may have internal parking in that area. The scenic corridor itself will still maintain the screening, so the thrust of the aesthetic piece of the scenic corridor will be maintained. Staff felt that it was supportable subject to conditions.
Thank you, Joe, for the explanation. You're the applicant.
Good morning, David
Have you been
Wright.
sworn in?
Yes, I have.
Thank you.
TSP Companies, P.O. Box 1016, Tampa, Florida. Just wanted to
Can you
thank
say your
staff.
name again for the record, please?
David Wright. Just wanted to thank staff for their assistance. We're in agreement with the conditions, and I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We'll now open the public hearing. Is there anyone here wishing to speak in favor of item E7? Anyone here to speak in opposition to item E7? Closed public hearing. Motion by Commissioner Miller, seconded by Commissioner Kemp and Chris. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please record your vote.
Motion carried 7-0.
Next item.
Next item is E8 on the agenda, personal appearance 18-0973. Commissioners, this is a plan development that was approved in 2003. Within that plan development, it limited Parcel B to a maximum square footage of 108,000 square feet, and within that distribution, it required that that a certain percentage of that be office. The applicant is requesting that that restriction on the office piece be lifted, and that the increase in overall square footage for the parcel be allowed to increase up to 113,000 from 108. So essentially, at the end of the day, what we would have is general commercial uses with a maximum of 113,000 square feet. They're also asking for an edit to the transportation conditions that are required with respect to spacing requirements and for right-in, right-out access. They're agreeing to the condition. However, they want to maintain the permissibility to seek, if necessary, administrative relief through an administrative variance process with transportation engineering. If that relief is necessary, they want to go through that process. And by adding this condition, they would not have to come back to the board. They would be able to seek that process administratively. Staff has reviewed these conditions, and we are recommending approval with the conditions and with the edits that I just noted that have been handed out.
Okay, thank you, Joe, for that explanation. And is the applicant here? Good morning.
Morning. Cammie Corbett for the applicant. Joe did a great job of summarizing the request. We are in agreement with the conditions proposed by transportation, and we're here to address any concerns or answer any questions.
Very good, very good. Thank you. We'll open the public hearing on item E8. Is there anyone here wishing to speak in favor of item E8? Anyone to speak in opposition to item E8? Closed public hearing, board action. Motion by Commissioner Kemp, seconded by Commissioner Higginbotham to approve item E8. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please record your vote.
Motion carried 7-0.
And we're now on item E9.
Item E9 is personal appearance 18-0975. This is in Sonona-Sassa. It's located in the northwest corner of 579 and Joe Ebert Road. Commissioners, this site has been recently before you and approved for development entitlements, for residential entitlements. They're seeking an additional access point. There's an access point along the south part of the site, which is on the western property line. They're asking for an additional access point, which will be located on the west also, but up to the north.
Excuse me just one second. Do you know what that was? I mean, I don't think any of us would like something like that to fall on top of us from so far up. I think maybe if we could have somebody call Tom Fass's office and have him come down here and check this out. We don't know what it was. It could have been, no, I'm not saying that. Anyway, yeah, we'll just check it out and you can proceed.
Thank you. If we're good to go, then we have as an additional access point on the western property boundary on the north part of the site. There's an existing access point approved to the south on that same property boundary. They will maintain that. Presumably, this is going to work in conjunction with the comp plan amendment that was recently approved to the west and provide access to that area as well. Staff is recommending approval with conditions.
Okay, very good. Is the applicant here?
Yes, ma'am.
Been sworn in?
I have.
Thank you.
William Malloy, 325 South Boulevard. This is really just a quick kind of cleanup of this plan. It's this piece is part of a unified development. The applicant controls property to the north and property to the west, and this is just adding an additional access point. It's really just cross-access. And I'm happy to answer any questions about that.
Oh, okay, great. We are on item E9, and we'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone here wishing to speak in favor of item E9? Anyone to speak in opposition to item E9? Close public hearing. Motion by Commissioner Miller, seconded by Commissioner Kemp to approve item E9. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please record your vote.
Motion carried 6-0.
Thank you, Commissioners. That now takes us to the G portion of the agenda. These cases have oral argument filed. I don't know if you want to move for the oral argument in advance of me presenting the case.
Yes, I do. I was, can I have a motion to open for oral argument for item G1? Motion by Commissioner Miller, seconded by Commissioner Kemp. Please record your vote.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you, Commissioners. This is G1, first of the regular agenda, Rezoning PD 17-1081. This case was actually opened by the board and continued at the last board meeting. The existing zoning is ASC1. The proposal is for planned development. Just taking you back on a brief recap, the proposal is essentially for a boxing gym, and there's a zoning condition which will prevent neighborhood fairs. If you recall, when this came before us, it had some issues that were associated with the neighborhood fairs. The applicant proposed the plan development. Initially, they had included the neighborhood fairs. During the review process, they agreed to not actually to prohibit the neighborhood fairs. It also has a zoning condition that will require that they go through site engineering and after the fact permitting process to recognize the appropriate permits for the on-site activity that has occurred that are associated with this. The board sent this back and asked the applicant to meet with neighbors, which occurred. There was a meeting that occurred in our building that lasted for several hours. What came out of that, to our knowledge, is no change in conditions. So what is before you at the last meeting in terms of the configuration, the conditions, the site plan, et cetera, is the same. And staff is recommending approval of this with conditions.
Okay. Members, we have already gone through the oral argument on this. We are now in board discussion. So we will continue where we left off in the board discussion on item G1. Commissioner Miller, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To Mr. Moretta, we asked them to go back and meet with the citizens community to see if there's certain things that can be worked out. And you're saying that they met and there are no provisions, no changes to nothing at all?
That's correct, sir. They met. I can't attest to the status of the progress that they made at that meeting. As I understand it, that there was some clarification that was provided. That gave apparently some folks maybe some satisfaction, but we know there are still people in opposition.
Okay. Let me see if I can recall what happened at that last meeting. The issue was concerning the fairs, am I correct? Was that one of them? Was it a fair or a neighborhood fair or something along those lines?
There were neighborhood fairs that were occurring that the neighborhood that we received quite a bit of complaints on. There was code enforcement activity related to the complaints that led to inspections of the site, which were related to both the boxing gym and some other structures. that have been cited and are going through after the fact permitting. And that's all been, spoken to the extent possible in the zoning conditions, and that's why we have the condition that say that they have to go through site engineering, and we have prohibited the neighborhood events. If the plan development zoning is not approved, then the ASC1 zoning would prevail, because that's the current zoning. The neighborhood events would be permissible. They would still have to go through the appropriate permitting process to get that done, and they would also have to correct all the structural pieces that are allowed on the site. The boxing gym is really what's hanging in the balance. It's not allowed by the existing zoning.
So if we pass this today, they would be able to have those neighborhood fairs. They would not be able to have them.
They will not. They are something that is allowed to be considered under the existing zoning. The plan development that's before you would prohibit those outright. And if the PD were approved, there would be no more neighborhood fairs allowed on that site at all.
I think the other issue was the boxing events was causing some problems with parking, something along those lines. Am I correct?
I think there's a concern that the boxing will lead to boxing events. There are hours of operation. I want to believe, without looking at the conditions, that they're limited to shut down at 9:30 and open up at 5:30. Is that correct? And no weekend operations. Is that correct?
No what?
No weekend operations. So, the attempt to minimize the potential for that to occur is regulated primarily with those hours. A boxing event is not something that we would typically see in a boxing gym, because it's not an event center. So what the zoning is permitting is the actual gym itself, not an events venue.
One more question, Madam. So if I could recall, which I'm not really recalling that well, what was the issue with the citizens out there? What was their concern?
I think the citizens would have to speak to that without me putting words in their mouth, but I believe the citizens' issues were the ongoing issues associated with the neighborhood events, and the ongoing perceived and existing violations, parking, ingress and access, ingress and egress for the events as well.
So if we pass this today, would that alleviate those issues?
It would alleviate any issues for sure that are associated with neighborhood events, because it would be prohibited. And then the parking issue would be spoken to, at least to the extent it can be spoken to, by our site requirements, because they would have to go through site engineering and accommodate for parking associated with the boxing gym. And they would have to make also engineering improvements for any water that's displaced by parking. They would have to deal with that in site engineering, and they will also have to follow up with the piece that they've been cited for structural, which includes both building violations and potentially, I believe, fire violations, unless they've been remedied.
If this passes?
Either way, the buildings will have to be remedied if it passes or not. What's hanging in the balance of this is the boxing gym. And if the board desires to have a prohibition that doesn't exist in the current zoning on the neighborhood events.
Okay. I may have a motion to come back. I see Commissioner Higginbotham's in the queue, so I'll come back.
Right. Thank you very much. Commissioner Higginbotham, you're recognized.
Thank you, Commissioner Miller. Seems to me that we were going for a limitation on hours because of the conduct of some of the people who were participating, and there was stress or conflict between the residents and those people who were coming in. But
they were worried about the hours going so late into the night.
Okay.
That I do remember that, the hours. Is anything in what they talked about discuss limiting the hours?
The zoning conditions limit the hours to 9:30 and then 9 o'clock, and then no activity on the weekends. We've asked the applicant if they had any adjustments to the conditions, and as late as Friday afternoon, they said they had no changes that they were going to make. They indicated if there was a discussion in here that they might be willing to make changes. Yesterday we heard back from the applicant saying that they may make changes, but we don't have anything firm that says here are our changes. So we have not reviewed any changes as of right now.
Oh, okay, yes, Commissioner Miller.
Okay, so,
recognized.
thank you, Madam Chair. So there's no changes. The hours of operation are from 5 to 9, about 5:30 to 9, am I correct? And that's 7 days a week?
It's 5:30 PM to 9 PM Monday through Friday, and closed on Saturday and Sunday for the boxing gym.
And they can't have any tournaments or anything like that whatsoever in the boxing gym?
It is, the approval is for a gym boxing training facility rather than an event center. So yes, it would not permit boxing events, boxing exhibitions.
What's your pleasure?
That it didn't come before us again. I thought that they were going to go back and make some conditions to this application. And we asked them to meet with the citizens. They met with the citizens, and now I'm hearing that as of right now, there are no conditions that were put forth to alleviate the issues out there. And that's a concern of mine. And since they haven't made any effort to do that, they haven't made any effort to try to make sure that the citizens are satisfied along with what they're doing and reaching a common ground, and that didn't happen, I'm gonna make a motion to deny.
Okay, there's a motion by, let me ask you, Commissioner Miller, would you, and I don't know if we can do this, can we call the applicant up to answer questions? Would you like to ask the applicant a question about the conditions before we go forward on your motion, just so there's clarity? Yes.
Okay.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the County Commission. My name is James F. Montjoy, Jr. My office address is 8910 North Del Mabry Highway, Suite 23, Tampa, Florida. I'm speaking on behalf of Mr. Will Velez of the Hurricane Boxing Gym, who is the owner of the facility and who would like to have this PD pass. Question number one, on the 27th of June, we had a meeting where we had approximately 20 people from the community who came out and expressed some of their concerns. And one of the concerns was security on site, which we told them that we would provide security by staff, trainers, coaches, and parents who bring their kids to the location, drop them off, and pick them up at the end of the night. The structure of the program is developed so that the kids come to the program after school from 5 to 9, so that they will have the training that they need to participate in weekend events that Mr. Velez and his wife sponsor, and they go out throughout the state of Florida with the kids and they train and they box on the weekend. Now, as far as the weekend activity at the site, it is only governed by the agriculture of the animals that they have there, and they have some kids who volunteer and come out and help feed the animals and take care of the stalls and stables that go on. Secondly, the transportation was an issue that was in the meeting as far as the kids and the parents. And there are some kids that reside in the community in the area that walk to the site, they come into the site, and parents, 80% of the parents drop them off and pick them up. Also, in our site plan development, we have provided a new sidewalk that is fully along the front distance of the project, plus a sidewalk and a driveway that also accommodates Hillsborough County Fire Protection for them to come in. If there's any fire rescue needs to be done on site, they'll be able to access the site, exit the site, and do anything that they need to do in regards to the county code. Secondly, one of the requests was the availability that was mentioned at the meeting as far as kids from the local schools. And we said to them that we would like the parents of those schools come out to the site and try to join the nonprofit organization. The nonprofit organization have an issue whereby they can only limit it to 10 to 20 students. So if the parents come out and they fill out an application and hope that their kids can become a part of the organization, then they will possibly have space for the children. All the past events, as far as fairs and events that have gone on that site, based upon the zoning hearing master and staff, which we love working with them, we will not do any events on that site. We will accommodate in every way possible that this site is safe, secure, and also do not impede on anybody that lives within that area any problems, because we also have to go through site development, after the fact permitting, and become in compliance what that site needs to do in order to comply to Hillsborough County rules and regulations.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioner Miller. You're recognized.
Let me ask you one simple question. You said security. You said the security will be staff, parents, and someone else?
Yeah, it will be the locals, you know, the staff that works there, the parents that come and pick up their kids and get them in their car safely, and also because he cannot afford to have a security company, you know, ABC Security, to work the site. They're gonna, you know, just like anybody else, they're gonna make sure that the kids are secure on that location in that area.
Your staff, the staff certified for this type of
That
thing?
I'm not. I'm sure. I'm sorry. It's staff. He says that staff are certified.
He who said that?
Mr. Velez.
Okay. All right, thank you. Madam Chair, can I ask
Yes.
a question of Ms. Lundgren?
Yes.
Did we have people, citizens that were signed up to speak in opposition to this?
Yes, Commissioner, last meeting, we had two citizens rather speak in opposition. There were 3 that were signed up. One wasn't present, but there was a Mr. Castellano, Ms.
Okay.
Fernandez, and Ms. Deborah Hale who are signed up.
Madam Chair,
yeah,
Madam Chair, since we
opposition.
brought up the applicant, I'd like to bring up one of those of the opposition.
Okay,
Mr.
you're-
Castellano? Come on.
You're Mr. Castellano?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm John Castellano. I live at 102 Renell Drive in Brandon. My concerns is strictly safety. We see that 32nd Avenue South is a dead-end street. Comes right to the end of Mrs. Hale's property. To get in to her property, if there's cars there, it blocks the poor lady. She can't get in and out. I've seen cars parked all up and down the side there. I own the property, me and my family, since my mother and parents have passed. The 3 acres, which is right across the street from him. There has been incidents where something serious could happen down there. They're locked in. There's no other street. One way in and one way out. This is inconsistent zoning for any kind of commercial activity. I don't understand how it's been approved, but at any rate, in my estimation, it's wrong. I understand that a fire truck had to get there for one incident. They had to back the fire truck out 2 blocks to 70th Street to get out of there. Okay? Now, I could show you some pictures here that shows what my property looked like before we since have leased, or just prior to this situation, the 3 acres to Mr. Velez for grazing.
Okay.
Mr. Castellano, can I ask Mr. Castellano a
Oh,
question?
yes.
The issue concerning the parking along the one-way in and one-way out, was that issue done, was that caused because of the events they were having, such as the fair or gym, or, but now what we're talking about now, they will not be able to do that?
Well, this is the thing. Mr. Velez has used our property for 2 years now, my 3 acres, for grazing. It is not being used for grazing. We gave him a 0 lease. He's not using it for grazing. He's got stuff stored all over it, and he's got stables. It says simply he can't build anything on it without our explicit permission. He's got stables out there, horse stables. So the point of it is that we're open for liability. We gave him the opportunity to use our property. He's not using it as we gave it to him. So this is my concern with this situation here.
Ms. Costello, hold on. I don't think that's part of what we're
No.
discussing here.
Okay, all right, well, I'm just referring to.
My question is, you talked about safety, and you talked about cars blocking in and causing an issue on one-way in and one-way out street. My question to you is, if this passes the way it's written right now, they will not be able to have the fairs, they will not be able to have any tournaments. Would that alleviate that problem? Plus the fact.
That's one safety part. The other safety part that I'm concerned about is that when I seen the rezoning sign, I stopped, I was going there with my lady friend just to show her my 3 acres where it was at, and there was a rezoning sign up. When I pulled up to the property to see that zoning sign, Mr. Velez was standing out in the street, and I slowed down and he asked me what I was doing, what was my business. I'm on a county street, but he asked me what I was doing. So I'm reading the poster. I said, what is this about? He says he's putting in a boxing gym. You know, the kind of boxing gym, you know, to help people, kids off the street, you know, the bad boys, the boys that can kill you. This is my concern, that this is right there, right close to Bing Elementary School. The pictures that I can show you is less than a quarter of a mile to Bing Elementary School.
This is now going
this is
off
safety
the
concerns.
record of DHM.
Let me ask a question to the applicant. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Costello. We're done. I'm done.
You're done?
Yeah. Would you accept a condition that you hire security staff during your events? I'm concerned that you got staff, parents, and all these other folks that's in security that are not licensed to do any of this stuff.
Okay. We will accept if we will hire staff, security staff, to be on site from 5:30 to 9 o'clock at night to support the kids and safety of that.
You said you would do that?
Yeah, we'll do that.
Okay, I withdraw my motion to deny then.
So are you going to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve it with the condition that they have security every time that they're open. Hired, paid, certified security every time they're open.
Licensed security.
Licensed security.
License, okay.
That's my motion.
There's a motion by Commissioner Miller. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion, second by Commissioner White. Is there any further discussion on G1? No, ma'am, we're not into public comment on this item. We already did that in the previous meeting. So is there any further discussion? Seeing none?
Madam Chair, could just clarify, I just want to make sure we get the intent of the amendment right. This is for that 5:30 to 9 while the boxing training
Yes.
is going on, as opposed to the ag events, that the ag uses that go on the weekend. This is for the box.
Well, I'm talking about every time they're open.
Okay.
Every time they're open and people are there.
Monday through Friday, and then
Saturday
Saturday,
and
if
Sunday.
Saturday and Sunday, if somebody's there working with the cows and the
So
horses.
basically, at all times when it's open, there's
When it's
security
open.
on the president.
When there's activity.
When there's
on-
activity there, yes.
Right, okay. So is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please record your vote on item G1.
Motion carried 6-1. Commissioner Christ voted no.
Okay, we are now on item G2, and I need a motion to open for oral argument. Motion by Commissioner Hagan, seconded by Commissioner White. Please record your vote. Open for oral argument.
Commissioner Higginbotham. Motion carried 7-0.
And I see on item G2 that there's additional evidence that's being proposed. Do we need a motion to?
Yes, Madam Chairman. We did receive requests for additional evidence submitted by the applicant's attorney, and I reviewed that request, discussed that with the applicant's attorney, Ms. Batzel, that I do recommend that the board deny that request based on it not meeting the standard for introduction of additional evidence.
Okay, so we need a motion to deny the additional evidence as presented by the applicant. Motion by Commissioner White, seconded by Commissioner Hagan. Please record your vote.
Motion carried 7-0.
Okay.
Thank
Joe?
you, Commissioners. This is application number RZ 18-0305, located southeast quadrant of 14th Avenue Southeast and 15th Street Southeast. It's a 171-acre site. It has three existing PDs that were approved at various times. Essentially what they're proposing is to decrease the unit count from 425 to 405. And they're proposing a plan development that is requiring or is requesting some relief from the character guidelines that are in the Ruskin overlay plan. When staff reviewed this, the thrust of our concern with it and lack of support is rooted in the character guidelines and how this project deviates from those lot sizes, particularly with respect to the relief that's sought, seeking to not contribute to the Ruskin overlay in the way that staff feels that is needed to evaluate this to get to the point where it will alleviate our concerns. So accordingly, we're not recommending approval of this and are recommending denial.
Okay, thank you very much. And we'll now move to the applicant presentation. Is the applicant here?
Yes, ma'am.
And you will have 10 minutes.
Thank you. Elise Batzel with Phelps Dunbar, 100 South Ashley, Suite 1900. I'm joined today by Steve Luce, who is the Director of Entitlements with Eisenhower Property Group. Jeff Hills is unable to be here today. He's the CEO and President, but we will include his comments in our presentation. And Clark Lowmiller, who is our King engineer. We do have the same information that we submitted in forms that you can flip through. If I can submit that just for your review. It's going to go on the Elmo, but sometimes you like to see that.
Okay, would you like
It's
to
not
use the
additional.
microphone over at the Elmo
Yes, thank
also?
you. Thank you. This property, as you've seen in the staff report, is 171 acres located in Ruskin. It's located at the southeast corner of 14th Avenue Southeast and 15th Street Southeast. The future land use classification is R4. Currently, the property is entitled with 3 isolated planned developments for a total of 425 units. If I could have the Elmo, thank you. There's the pink PD, which we refer to as Spencer, the blue PD 060850, and the yellow 051778. As you can see, these are 3 distinct planned developments that are currently approved. They are not interconnected. We are not proposing here to create any new entitlements. We are proposing to modify the existing entitlements to make them more consistent with a vision and comprehensive plan policies. Our development is more consistent and with the comprehensive plan policies, and it's not consistent with any of the goals and objectives. The Ruskin Community Plan, just to touch on procedure a little bit before we get into the plan itself, in the livable communities element of the comp plan is very broad. What we are proposing meets all of the consistent with and meets all of the goals of the plan. Procedurally, it's really important to note that the Land Development Code, when you adopted the Ruskin Community Guidelines, you adopted those as guidelines, not requirements. And you put a mechanism for deviation in there so that you could consider properties that do the following things. And this is what your comp plan requires. Number 1, the applicant has to submit a plan development. That's why we're here before you today. And number 2, we have to demonstrate that the project furthers the intent of the Ruskin Community Plan, that it's creative and it's not simply a deviation in order to maximize entitlements. That's very important here because we're not maximizing entitlements. In fact, we're reducing the number of units that were requested by 20 from 425 to 405. We have to show you that that deviation will allow flexibility in design, which you will see, that in turn it will be used to further the intent. The point is that your comprehensive plan doesn't require that we meet the guidelines in the Land Development Code, as long as we demonstrate how the unique circumstances are present on this site, which we will do for you this morning, and that the proposed development otherwise furthers the intent of the LDS and vision goals and strategies of the Ruskin Community Plan. So this project, this property is uniquely situated. Under tab 2 in your packet of information, you can see the floodplain and the floodway. This property is actually part on the next page of a major drainage system. You can see the wetland outlined there in yellow. It's a major protected wetland, and there's major upland preservation area around the wetland. We spent a great deal of time planning this development in order to design a project that protects those natural resources. And this furthers the intent of your comprehensive plan. This property, in addition to having these natural constraints, it also has a number of physical constraints that limits what can be done on this property. If you turn to tab 3 or look on the Elmo, you'll see that we have a large TICO right-of-way running through the northwest quadrant of the property. To the south, it's bordered by the I-75 corridor. So those physical constraints add to the uniqueness of this property and how the development does have to be creative in design in order to simply work around what's there physically. One of the things that I want to talk about a little bit now is the characteristics of the area. It's really important that you understand what's around this site. I don't have this in your packet, but if you look at the Elmo, we have here, as you've seen, the utility corridor for TICO, the I-75 corridor. To the south is an existing mobile home community. To the north is affordable housing, and around that are all of these cookie cutter developments, all 50 by 100 or all 50 by 110. Again, as we'll talk about later, the Ruskin Community Plan and the goals want a diversity in lot sizes. They want to have a diversity of income levels and housing types to be able to come into the community of Ruskin. The applicant right now can build 425 units as it's approved with no further developments. But you're probably wondering why. Why are we here? Why is the developer spending all of this money to get a change in something that's already approved? Well, they really want to create a better development, and we'll talk about why in just a little bit. But let me paint a better example of the existing entitlements for you. If you look under tab 5, you're going to see what's existing right now, those 3 isolated pods of development. There is no interconnectivity to the outside, which is encouraged by your comprehensive plan. There is a lack of connectivity within the 3 existing PDs. And there's 425 single-family lots approved. As opposed to what we are proposing today. If you look here, you can see this lack of connectivity. Specifically, we're adding new connectivity, both internal and external, and this is best shown on tab number 7. Each of these arrows that I've drawn in here are new points of connection to the outside development, which did not exist with the existing entitlements. So we have connectivity, we have this unified sense of place. In other words, we are connecting the pods now to create one overall development. And we are reducing the density. We are actually taking 20 units away in order to make this happen, to create this sense of place, to protect the natural environment. Now that you've seen the current entitlements, you understand a little bit more about the natural and physical constraints of the property, and you understand that we're reducing the density from 425 to 405. It kind of begs the question, right? If we aren't trying to maximize density, why are we before you? When a community is better planned and creates a sense of place, it's more attractive to future home buyers. So it makes sense for the developer to come back and reduce the number of units so that people want to come live here. Basically, we are trying to provide something that is better for the applicant, it's better for the county, and more importantly, it's better for the future homeowners that may live here in the future. Although this is a conceptual site plan, you can see that connectivity. Very quickly, I just want to talk about compliance with the Ruskin community goals so that you have that before you. Goal 3 says that we want to protect and enhance Ruskin's natural environment and ensure that it remains an integral part of the community. Well, you can see the protection of the floodways here in the floodplain. We are protecting this 8.7 acres from impact, and we are creating on our plan, which is a condition of our plan, 5 additional acres of open space, community gathering space, and recreational areas. all in compliance with and in furtherance of the the comprehensive plan. Goal 5 talks about community and diversity and character. Talks about the fact that we want to provide for diversity of home styles and types while protecting Ruskin's small town character. So the prior developments had 3 or 4 types, 40 by 120. If you go back to tab 4, you can see there's no diversity in the surrounding property. It's all 50 by 100 lots. We are trying to encourage more lot sizes. There are 7 different lot sizes in what we're proposing. We are trying to create different lot sizes, different income levels, and different housing types in furtherance of Goal 5. We are also encouraging development that is consistent and integrated with the Ruskin community design features. There will be no walls, gates, or isolating features. It will be open to outside areas. And with the new integration of the 3 PDs into one comprehensive plan, it provides interconnectivity not just within the existing development, but also within the greater Ruskin community at large. As we've said, pursuant to 3.22.02 of the Land Development Code, you have the ability to grant deviations if they first come in the form of a PD, and second, how much time do I have?
Your time's up.
Thank
you. You get 10 minutes. And we will now move to the opponent and proponent testimony. These are, of course, limited to people that are on the record, the parties of record. So we have heard from Elise Batzell. We have 2 people signed up in opposition. You will have 10 minutes total. Noelle LaCour and Mariella Smith.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'm Mariella Smith. I helped write the Ruskin Community Plan, and I'm also a candidate for Hillsborough County Commission. I'd like to ask the people who are here in opposition to this today to please stand. Thank you. The Ruskin Community Plan guidelines were quite recently codified into the Land Development Code in 2014. These are not onerous requirements. The Land Development Code requires lots to be 10,000 square feet in RSC4 zoning districts. The Ruskin Community Plan allows much smaller lots according to the guidelines if you build according to the Ruskin Community Plan. The applicant is arguing that they should be allowed to deviate from the guidelines because they are doing other stuff in our plan. But what good would the guidelines be if you could say, we're not doing the guidelines, but we're doing some other parts of your plan? That's not the way this works. You can't just pick what you want and leave the rest. You have to do the whole plan, including the guidelines. In fact, this is spelled out explicitly in LDC Part 3.22, which says that any deviation from the guidelines must be used to further the intent of the guidelines themselves and further the vision, goals, and strategies of the plan as a whole. And, not or. You have to do it all, the guidelines and the rest of the plan. This was deliberately worded this way in extensive community discussions so that the developers could not do what this applicant is trying to do, and Joe Moretta probably remembers those community discussions. This wording in the Land Development Code means that you can't simply argue that you are deviating from the guidelines in order to further some other part of our community plan. You must be furthering the intent of the guidelines themselves. So what's the intent of the guidelines you have to further? The intent is to maintain a certain neighborhood character of larger lots. Also, the Ruskin Plan says previous development does not set a precedent. If they want to develop according to their underlying zoning, they are free to do so. But if they want to change the zoning, they must rezone according to the plans already in place. They say they'll build less density than the underlying zoning. That doesn't matter a bit. It's irrelevant. They're asking for more density than the Ruskin Plan allows, more density than they can have if they build according to these guidelines of lot size and densities. And the plan says you can't deviate to get more entitlements than the plan allows. It is not enough to pick out some little ways that the proposal is slightly better than some previous zoning, even though it is much worse in another way. And the staff report shows how it's worse, actually, than our guidelines. It's not enough to say you're coming a little bit closer to our plan in one way while contradicting it in other ways. You have to completely abide by the plan as it is now in place. Also, the wetlands running through this site flow into the Little Manatee River, as you can see on the Elmo, and this is in the record, and you can see it on the Elmo. So, the fact that they're not building in those wetlands does not get them a medal or allow them anything to deviate. Nobody can build in those wetlands, all right? The Little Manatee River, where those wetlands flow to, is a pristine river teeming with life. The state designated it as an outstanding Florida water. It's an eco-tourist destination, an important source of fishing, both commercial and recreational. So it is critical that we keep this river clean and keep the wetlands flowing into this river clean. And this is another reason to have larger lot sizes around those wetlands, to absorb and filter stormwater runoff before it reaches our wetlands. So also there's a TECO power line easement, which is a planned route for the South Coast Greenway Trail, and that's a planned paved trail for bicycles and pedestrians. Some of that trail is built now, some of it's being built soon, and we need to leave this easement open for that trail. The site plan shows some ponds in that easement that they were going to build, but whatever is finally built here, we'll need to leave that easement free and open to accommodate the South Coast Greenway Trail. Thank you.
Thank you. And is Noel, is it Liquor or Lessor? Liquor, okay. Good morning.
Hello, good morning.
You have 5 minutes left.
Okay. The Planning Commission found that the proposed plan development is inconsistent with the Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan for Unincorporated Hillsborough County. Development Services found that the proposed plan development is not supportable. The zoning hearing master recommended that the proposed plan development rezoning request be denied. The proposed plan development does not meet the Ruskin Community Plan and guidelines and the Land Development Code. Please do the right thing and vote no on rezoning request 18-0305. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And that takes care of the applicant and the opposition testimony. The applicant has a 5-minute rebuttal. Would you like to come forward?
Yes, please. Just to clarify again and put on the record, what you've heard is when home builders go into this area of Ruskin, this is the prime market for first-time home builders. So the 40-foot lots that are included, we also have 60-foot lots. We also have 50-foot lots. This is a diverse community that's being built. And while there are 40-foot lots, we have improved the situation by adding 77 8,000 square foot lots that were not there before. We are eliminating any lots that were under 5,000 square feet, which is definitely in furtherance of the guidelines. Those weren't there before. They had 4,800 lots in the existing development. This could be built today, but nobody wants to build a development that's not the right development to build. But given the opportunity to redevelop this in a way that works for the community and works for the first-time home builders and those that might live here in the future, it makes sense. Due to the location of this property, in addition, between affordable housing, between a mobile home park, I-75, and the TECO corridor, this is the type of person that's going to come in and buy these lots. This 40-foot lot product is very attractive. And this is not all 40-foot lots. We have increased the number of larger lots. We have provided a sense of place. One of the things that was spoken about just earlier was the trail system. We are committed to the trail, and we are happy to add a condition today saying that we would develop internal trails as well as to connect to the Greenway Trail when it's here. I have a schematic, if you'd permit me to put it on the Elmo to address that.
And you have, is this testimony that was presented at the zoning hearing master?
It's not, but it's directly in rebuttal to what the prior...
You can't use it.
Okay, that's fine.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
So I'll just let you know that we're committed to developing an internal trail, and we'd be happy to add the condition that that internal trail connects to the corridor. We don't have an intention not to allow that corridor to come through. So if the Board of County Commission would like to add a condition discussing the trail and the fact that, of course, that land is dedicated, we can't do anything with that property now as it is. We're happy to do that.
Okay, thank you. Does that
Thank
conclude
you.
your rebuttal?
Yes, we're available to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you for
Okay.
your time.
Great, thank you very much. And we will now move to Planning Commission staff.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Tony Garcia, Planning Commission staff. The 171-acre site is comprised of 3 approved planned developments, as has already been stated. The total number of dwelling units currently approved is 425. The applicant is proposing a maximum of 405 single-family residential lots. The lots would be a mix of 40, 50, and 60-foot lots, ranging in size from 5,000 square feet to 8,000 square feet. The subject site is within the limits of the Ruskin Community Plan and is subject to the Ruskin Community Character Guidelines. The subject property is located within Area 3 of the Ruskin Neighborhood Area Map. Because this is a new plan development, the project is required to be consistent with the character identified by the Ruskin Community Plan for the corresponding neighborhood areas and is required to comply with the following. 1, residential type, single-family detached. Number 2, projects larger than 50 acres, at least 20% of all lots, 8,000 square feet or larger, with a minimum 60-foot lot width. No more than 20%, 5,000 square feet. 5,000 square foot lots must have a minimum lot width of 50 feet. No lot smaller than 5,000 square feet. The proposed project would not meet the 20% maximum for 5,000 square foot lots, as 172 out of the 405 lots are shown at 5,000 square feet, which is 42%. While the applicant has indicated that at least 20% of the total lots will be at least 8,000 square feet in size, Planning Commission staff has found that number to be 19%, 77 lots out of 405 total lots. In addition, information was not provided demonstrating that those 8,000 square foot lots would be a minimum of 60 feet in width, as required by the Ruskin Community Character Guidelines. Lastly, the applicant has proposed 169 40-foot wide lots, which represents approximately 41% of the total lots proposed, 169 out of 405 total lots. Per the guidelines, no lots smaller than 5,000 square feet are permitted. While the Ruskin Community Character Guidelines does include a section that outlines requirements should an application be inconsistent with the guidelines, Planning Commission finds the proposed deviations too significant. Over 40% of the project would be 40-foot wide lots when the guidelines specifically prohibit any lot sizes less than 5,000 square feet. In addition, there are over twice as many 5,000 square foot lots than are allowed by the guidelines. Lastly, the 8,000 square foot lots that are provided and are very close to meeting the 20% threshold that is required, there is no certainty that those lots meet the 60-foot wide minimum. Given the distance between the requirements and what is proposed, the proposed lot sizes and widths are too intense. That being said, the applicant is not meeting the intent of the Ruskin Community Plan nor the Ruskin Community Character Guidelines. Based upon those considerations, Planning Commission staff finds the proposed development inconsistent with the future of Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan for unincorporated Hillsborough County. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Zoning Hearing Master.
The zoning hearing master considered the request to rezone 168 acres from existing plan development rezonings or zoning classifications to a new plan development zoning classification for the purpose of developing 405 single-family homes. The plan development zoning for the property is currently approved under 3 plan development zonings for 425 single-family homes. The zoning hearing master considered that the subject property is located within the Ruskin Community Plan and subject to the Ruskin Community Character Guidelines, which include standards regarding minimum lot size and width to encourage larger lot development. The zoning hearing master considered the recommendations of the Development Services Department and the Planning Commission, both of which do not support the requested rezoning application, as they find the request significantly deficient in terms of compliance with the Ruskin Community Plan guidelines regarding minimum lot sizes and widths. The zoning hearing master therefore found the request incompatible with the Ruskin Community Plan and inconsistent with the intent of the Land Development Code and Comprehensive Plan, and recommended denial.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll now move into board discussion, and the first commissioner in the queue is Commissioner Kemp. You're recognized.
Thank you. I'd like to start by making a motion to deny. As we've heard, the...
Okay, hold on one second. So we have a motion to deny. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a second to deny. Thank you.
As we've heard, the zoning hearing master denied this. Development Services found this not supportable. The Planning Commission inconsistent with the plan. As Ms. Smith stated, the meeting the neighborhood character review guidelines of the Land Development Code are not too onerous and had already been met in the 3 other PDs. This would set a very bad precedent. When I was aide to Commissioner Castor back in 2004, I was very active and attended and not participated, but attended many of the meetings where they were putting together the Ruskin Community Plan, and that was a plan that literally 50 to 100 people would show up over and over again, and for them to get and develop guidelines that were so careful and so thoughtful, and it's not as if we're working from or hearing from people that no longer are in touch with those. It's as if we have the founding fathers and mothers here to tell us what they did and what they were thinking about back then. Clearly, this doesn't meet the intent of what we should be doing when we do this development in Ruskin, and those guidelines can be met and should be met. We should not break precedent by doing this. We should require that the neighborhood character guidelines that were so carefully and thoughtfully done protect the environment and protect the community and sense of place in Ruskin. And I have here, I mean, we've heard so much, and I won't speak to the specific lot sizes, kind of a little bit hard to follow, but the basic intent is that this community will be a better community. And the community is telling us that they want it to be built in consistent with what they work so hard on, and we should be doing that.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioner Higginbotham, you're recognized.
Thank you. I have a question of the applicant.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. There was a comment made about the easements, if I understood correctly. There was encroachment with ponds or waterways in the easement that would prohibit the use of those. Could you expand on that?
Of course. Nothing in the plan, it's a pod plan. So the actual site development plan will go through site review. Obviously the TICO has an easement and a corridor that we can't infringe on. So it is never our intent to put something in that corridor. In addition, we expect the Greenway Trail to go through that at some point in time. We will develop ponds around that because that's where the natural floodway and floodplain flows. And so to the extent we can keep that natural waterway flowing as much as it is now in accordance with the natural flow, we intend to do that, which is why the ponds are located up in that quadrant. Sure. But we will not, nothing in our development and site plan approval will prohibit the trail from coming through wherever they choose to come through in that area.
Yeah, so in fact, that's just the placement right now of the ponds is to enhance
the floodway,
okay.
Yes, and the natural drainage. It was specifically done that way, pushing the development to other parts of the community to preserve the natural resources. Yes, sir.
And with comments on deviating from the community plan, that was to address market conditions and the buying capabilities of the buyers who want that right to home ownership?
Well, I mean, that's one point, but the deviations, again, they're not guidelines, they're deviations. And if you look at the natural and physical constraints that are on this site, there's very little property left to develop. When we thought about redeveloping this property, it was very thoughtful consideration about how to make this better, how to maintain the economic viability of the project, but also how to enhance the project as a whole. And so it's not just about, you know, having the smaller lots. If we complied with every standard that was in the Ruskin Community Guidelines, it would not be feasible to develop the property. And currently there's 425 units approved on that property. So we said, how do we make that better? How do we make this a better development? And so that's what you see before you today. Again, the deviations, since they are approvable by you. I mean, if you went through the Ruskin community plan process and you made those requirements, we would be here asking for variances, or we wouldn't be here at all. So it was contemplated that people would come in special circumstances like ours, where there's natural constraints and physical constraints to the property, that in this particular situation force some of those areas. If you look at tab, I think it's number 7, you can see how some of the lots have to get squished to get development in there at all because of those natural and physical constraints. So our point is that this is a uniquely situated property, exactly the type of property that you guys thought about when you put that deviation mechanism in the plan. When is it appropriate to deviate? This is not way up in the middle of Ruskin. It's an isolated community. It's down on the fringe of the Ruskin community development community area. And so we think if you're going to grant deviations, this is the prime property to do that for those reasons. Thank you.
I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you done with your comments, Commissioner Hagan?
I am.
Okay, Commissioner Hagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, clearly there's value in this proposal. There are no new entitlements. They simply want to improve and enhance the development. And everything I heard, this request does just that. They're reducing the density from 425 to 405. The proposal is closer to what is envisioned in the Ruskin Community Plan. There's additional cross-access and greater connectivity within the PD and externally. They're providing additional green space, and there's a new condition of developing an internal trail and connecting to the future Greenway Trail. I don't know how denying this request with all of the improvements and conditions will result in a better development. That just does not make sense to me. So the question I have normally staff is pushing hard for greater connectivity, internal access. I mean, time and time again, that leads the reason why, the basis for recommendations of approval. So are the recommendations of denial simply because of the smaller lot sizes? And all of the improved conditions and enhancements do not offset that?
Yes, that's the primary reason for our recommendation of denial, is that the proposed lot sizes and lot widths didn't meet the Ruskin guidelines, and we didn't have a clear explanation of why the lot sizes were being shrunk from what being reduced from what the community, what the regulations call for, the guidelines call for, in exchange for what is being offered from the project.
Doesn't the plan recommend or have language regarding diversity and lot sizes?
It does, yes, sir.
Okay. I'm going to make a substitute motion for approval. Everything I heard, this is going to make this a better development. It's going to enhance the development. Additional green space, internal trail, connect to the Greenway Trail, connectivity within the PD and externally to the development. You're reducing the density. Why in the hell would we deny this? That doesn't make any sense.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Hagan, seconded by Commissioner Higginbotham. Substitute motion to approve item G2. Commissioner Krish, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I listened attentively to both sides. You know, the party that was speaking, the young lady speaking in favor of the project, I was impressed with your presentation. It was very thorough. It was very thoughtful. You know, I agree. I think every effort was made to try to have thoughtful consideration. However, nobody likes the however. I've been very engaged in community plans for a very long time, having been the architect of the first one, almost 30 years ago. And the part of this where I don't think you meet my threshold is not the density of the project, but the density and the size of the lots. I think the spirit of that community plan is to try to invoke larger lot sizes. And maybe with the acquisition of some additional real estate, those lots could be stretched. I'm not quite sure what would need to be done in order to meet that threshold for me. But I do want to say I think you did an incredible job up there. I think you really pushed a lot of buttons and made a lot of points. And I hope those who are here in opposition understand that you tried your best to meet their concerns. But for me, you just didn't quite get through to my threshold.
Okay, I don't see any other commissioners in the queue. I just want to make some comments. I did sit through the Gibsonton plan, which I thought was the first one, but I guess it wasn't. And I appreciate the citizens. I mean, that was like 25 years ago. And I appreciate the hard work and the citizen engagement, everything that's so important to maintaining integrity, I think, of these neighborhoods. But as I have constantly said at this board, the Planning Commission staff needs to go back and review and update those plans with current, with the current state of our economy, with the growth and explosion that's going on. But there hasn't really been a huge push to get that done. This is another area, Gibsonton and Ruskin. I mean, Gibsonton, Sims Road is like a disaster now because so much development has happened on Sims Road. But I agree with Commissioner Hagan. This is a good, well thought out development. I love Ruskin to pieces. No one has done any more for this community than I have since I've been on this commission. But the problem is because of code and because of the fact that they didn't do enough to mitigate for these smaller lot sizes, I think it puts this in jeopardy. I'm counting votes up here. I don't believe we're going to win on the substitute motion. I do believe that. And I hate to see this project lose. I really wish we could continue it so the developer could go back, work with the citizens, and come up with a much better proposal that could mitigate some of these concerns, because that's where we're at. How can we come to a middle ground on this so that we can move forward? Now, and I do want to ask this, if we didn't approve this today, you still have your zoning in place.
Yes, ma'am.
And so, just so it's clear on this board, this is not a zoning, this is a rezoning, and you still have the capability of developing this property, and what would that look like?
Absolutely. We've actually met with staff 4 times, one after the zoning hearing master, and put forth new conditions. Our biggest problem has been that we haven't got a lot of substantive feedback other than you're not meeting the guidelines. And so we would love to continue this hearing and work with neighbors and work with staff, but we would ask if you would direct them to provide us with substantive input so that we are not shooting in the dark. We have done we've spent tens of thousands of dollars in meetings with staff to try to make this the right project for you to approve. And we have 425 lots, and we want to make it better. So with that, we would absolutely be willing to continue the hearing.
Exactly. I mean, I think if that does work out, you need to engage with the citizens who worked hard to put their community plan together.
Absolutely.
Granted, you may not reach total agreement on both sides, but at least you're listening to them and you're hearing their voices. Commissioner Hagan is in the queue. You're recognized.
Okay, first of all, I don't see how anyone can review all of these conditions and improvements and not think this is a far better development. I'd love to hear the case for that. I'm completely blown away. That being said, gotten pretty good at counting votes up here. It doesn't appear that it would pass. I'll remove my motion, my substitute motion, and make a, I'm thinking a remand would be more appropriate than a continuance. Adam? What do you
Commissioner, a remand would open the record and allow more substantive discussion that might be somewhat constrained by the record. It would also give an opportunity to have a bit more work on the conditions that the applicant submitted. They give the general development parameters, but there are standards that we would typically.
All right, so I'll
have in
make
these conditions.
substitute motion to remand this back to the ZHM.
That date would be August 20th at 6 p.m.
August 20th would be the remand hearing, August 20th. Okay, Commissioner Higginbotham, you're recognized. Okay. Seeing no further board discussion, pardon me, Higginbotham. We do have substitute motion to remand item G2, which would be heard on August 20th. And we have a motion by Commissioner Higgins, second by Commissioner Higginbotham on the remand on G2. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please record your vote.
Motion carried 6-1. Commissioner Kemp voted no.
Thank you for your time and consideration.
Okay, thank you. Next item, G3.
Next item also has oral argument if you'd like to move forward at this point.
Yes, thank you. Beat me to it. Okay, a motion to open for oral argument, seconded by Commissioner White. Please record your vote. And is there?
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you, Commissioners. Next item is G3 on the agenda, rezoning for plan development 18-0304. This is located in Riverview, Balm, in the southwest corner or quadrant of Shelley Lane, County Road 672, generally south side of Rodine, about 866 feet east of Creek Preserve Drive. Commissioners, this involves the rezoning of two parcels and recognition of them as a receiving and sending site for density purposes. Both sites are zoned AR. The sites are both obviously being rezoned into a planned development fashion to be consistent with the RP2 provision that allows for the transfer. The AR zoning permits 1 to 5. This particular transfer will allow density that is in the vicinity of, in the receiving site, 410 dwelling units, and on the sending site, 300. The existing zoning, as I said, was AR, which permits 1 to 5. And so essentially, that's where we're at in terms of the context of it. The applicant has also requested for some relief from the buffering standards that are associated with RP2, and has also requested to be sought relief from the standard that requires the commercial. That's been evaluated, and there's existing commercial in the area that satisfies that requirement. So having said that, the staff found it to be consistent and compatible with the standards in the Land Development Code and in the comp plan that deal with the RP2, with the density transfer, and with the relief that's sought for both the commercial areas and the buffer reductions. Staff is recommending approval of this with conditions.
Thank you, Joe, for that explanation. Applicant, good morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
Been
Vim
sworn
Marchetti.
in?
Yes.
Good.
Vim Marchetti for the record, representing Eisenhower Property Group on this PD application. With me today is Steve Luce from Eisenhower. David Smith, our land planner, is here. Steve Henry, our traffic engineer. Clark Lowe Miller, who's from King Engineering as well. Joe did a good job explaining the application. It's undergone significant review through obviously both staffs, as well as the zoning hearing master. There are, of course, two separate parcels of land, one in Riverview planning area, one in the Balm planning area. There are comprehensive reports that have been filed on this application as a total. Let me have David Smith just go through very quickly a summary of the application, because it's a little bit different with the transfer in RP2, and then we'll just wrap it up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. David Smith, Stearns Weaver Miller, 401 East Jackson Street, Suite 2100. I'd like to use the Elmo. Thank you, Commissioners, this morning. As was indicated by staff, this is an RP2 rezoning under the comprehensive plan and provisions of the Land Development Code. Two parcels that are separate can be considered as one residential plan development under RP2 and transfer density from one to another. This graphic basically shows what we're talking about. This is the donating parcel, which is a Rodine. There's Rodine Road to the north. And here is the receiving parcel, which we call the Grove parcel. The northern parcel off of Rodine Road, this is an infill development. This infill development takes access off of Rodine Road, and there are two existing borrow pits, and here's where the infill development would occur. Give you some benchmarks. This is where the TV towers are located, or up here to our north. So this development pocket sits between what's Triple Creek to the south and the TV towers to the north. Tropical Acres is to the west. The second parcel is down off of Baum Waimama Road. This particular piece of property is adjacent to an existing RP2 PD on the west, on the east, and on the south. And it also proposes the residential development PD that's the receiving site. This is also the location where we're asking for the distance waiver for the commercial. There's adequate commercially zoned property in the area, but in the event that that property is not developed for the adequate square footage, we have the option to develop that on site. Just to also give you a little bit better perspective, as I mentioned on the north, this is the Rodine piece. This is Triple Creek to the south. So we're immediately abutting an existing PD development. We're also abutting a ditch that separates us from Tropical Acres. The southern parcel. The southern parcel, this is in red is the PD. This is the surrounding PD that's already RP2. We know there's been discussions with staff regarding our buffers, and basically the buffers proposed provide separation consistent with other RP2s developments in the area, specifically the one adjacent to us. It includes landscape fencing, berms, and shrubbery. And we're here to answer any questions anyone may have.
Okay, thank you very much. Do you want to use the rest of your time with Jay Kramer or Steve Henry?
Then Marquetti. No, we'll just save that time for rebuttal.
Okay, you'll have 5 minutes for rebuttal. Okay, we'll now move to parties of record in opposition. Bill O'Brien and Jerry Scogans. And you have 10 minutes total between the two of you. And good morning. Do you want to use the Elmo?
No, ma'am. I just was going to give a copy of what I had to say.
Okay, you can give it to the
I'll pass
clerk.
it on when I leave.
Okay.
Good morning. My name's Bill O'Brien. I live at 15002 Carlton Lake Road in Baum, Florida. My address is in Waimama, but it's Baum. I've lived in Baum all of my life. I represent myself in the Baum area, where I have served as president of the Civic Association. The Baum Civic Association and the citizens of the Baum community are opposed to granting approval of this rezoning and any other urban-style developments in our area not because we dislike development, but because we strongly disapprove of poorly planned development. The past performance of the Hillsborough County Planning Commission and commission staff has been disastrous. The traffic flows, the overall urban sprawl has dramatically impacted the lifestyles and the life quality of the residents in South Hillsborough County. It took me an hour and 40 minutes to drive here this morning. The plan development is inconsistent with the approved Baum Community Plan and is inconsistent with the future Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan. I helped draft the Baum Community Plan. We met on multiple occasions for months and drafted a concept of growth in our area, trying to plan forward with the County of Hillsborough to put together a game plan that will allow suitable growth to occur in a currently agricultural area. The major or number one goal of the Baum Community Plan seeks to maintain and preserve the rural and agrarian characteristics, atmosphere, and quality of life established by long-standing community residents, which include leisurely activities, strong neighborhood ties, faith-based organizations, and low rural density land use designations. Objective 4 of the comprehensive plan states that rural designations will provide areas for long-term agricultural use, large lot, low-density residential uses which exist without the threat of urban or suburban encroachment. This planned development is urban encroachment in a predominantly agricultural area. Comprehensive Plan 33-3 states that the open spaces are required to be provided in future development, and the applicant's plan does not provide suitable open space. The intent of the policy is to create a community, and this rezoning only creates a lot of people. Comprehensive Plan Policies 33-9 and 33-11 state that when developers receive approval to build high-density projects, they are obligated to provide infrastructure, schools, libraries, and jobs at their cost, not the taxpayers. Commissioners, this project, if approved, is placing this burden on the taxpayers. The infrastructure does not exist, none of the above. The BOM area does not have adequate transportation infrastructure in place to support the proposed urban development. The standard two-lane road access is inadequate. Planning Commission transportation staff reviews and subsequent reports provided the following. And I won't go on with the report, it's in the record, but overall what they said was they didn't do a transportation study, and I believe they didn't do it because they felt they wouldn't do anything based on the results. They also reported that access roadways supporting the proposed development were substandard, and although some have long-term plans for improvement, none are scheduled to be improved in the foreseeable future. There are no immediate plans for improvement. Yet the findings were overlooked and disregarded, and the staff provided a recommendation for approval. The transportation staff identified the intersection of Balwamama Road, Boyette Road, and County as a safety concern with the additional traffic generated from the project. The suggested fixes still deliver the same traffic flow to the same substandard roads. The zoning hearing master, planning staff, and the developer recite the 2011 Florida House Bill 7207 as reasoning to not consider transportation in their hearings and for the planned development. The intent of this bill was to incentivize development during depressed times, not to provide an escape route for irresponsible actions at the expense of the residents, at the expense and safety of the residents. You have the responsibility to manage development within the boundaries of right and wrong. This is not right. Hillsborough County Public Schools reviewed the proposed rezoning impact to the existing proposed school facilities, and it revealed a finding that all levels were inadequate to support the growth. In spite of this finding, Planning Commission staff recommended approval. Why do you insist on putting the cart before the horse? Staff commented during the hearing that school concurrency is tested at the time of permitting, not at zoning. Why would you recommend approval when you know school systems are inadequate now and will be at the time of permitting? How can this be a responsible recommendation, and who pays for the improvements later? We oppose the Rodine Borrow Pit donation of 54 dwelling units to the Grove. The parcels are 6.5 miles apart, and this is not in accordance with the intent of the donation program. The parcels are unrelated and only share the fact that both parcels are located in Hillsborough County. They're not even located in the same town. In addition, moving 54 residential units from Rodine to the Grove creates open space at Rodine, yet removes open space at Balm. The plan provides nothing for our open space, and once again, at the expense of the residents. We oppose the waiver request by the applicant to include some of the existing commercial properties as part of their specialty retail obligation. The applicant indicated that they would review and at the approximately 75% status of the project, if there wasn't enough commercial space, that they would take action to add or include the required commercial space. My question is, our question is, who is going to manage this requirement? In fact, most of the existing commercial properties that were noted are not suitable for the clientele that would be moving into the proposed development and should not be considered to grant the waiver. We oppose the applicant's request to reduce the 250-foot buffer to 50 feet. I won't elaborate. Jerry Scoggins is going to elaborate on this one, but I wanted to make sure it got in the record. The proposed development will result in landfilling that will adversely impact the neighboring properties, resulting in local flooding. Again, I won't elaborate because Jerry Scoggins is going to talk some about this.
And you'll have about 2 minutes left if you want to give the remaining time to him.
We stand ready to help mold a bright, prosperous, and well-planned future for our area. We also stand ready to fight against continued irresponsible actions going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jerry Scoggins.
Let me bring out this map. I brought it to the last meeting.
Okay, there's a microphone there. Please, when you speak, if you would speak into the microphone.
Okay, you guys see this?
No, excuse me. He's going to give you a microphone so you can speak into it so we can record everything.
Okay, my name's Jerry Scoggins. I live at 15024 Baum Waimama Road. I and the residents here and here are the only two on that side of the road. The subdivision surrounds me. On the opposite side of the road, there's already been approved subdivision right here for 310 homes. Already been approved. I am blocked in right there by both sides of over 800 homes. And you guys expect me to be happy with that or the development. I disagree with the development for the simple reason is they're not required to develop any of that road between the properties there and down past my house. So in other words, what they're going to do is they're going to propose a road that goes north at that apex up there, Baum Waimama Road, and they're going to bottleneck everybody right on my property. So that being said, there's another issue that I have with this. The 250-foot buffer is required in the area of concern. Now these guys, the developer, I'm not, picking on him, but they're trying to get a waiver for a 50-foot buffer around that subdivision. They're to require 70% of that subdivision to have a 250-foot buffer, and they're applying for a waiver, and I don't know why they're doing it. They shouldn't be allowed to do it because of the residential area. That being said, there's other ideas out there. Now, behind my house last fall, I had 2 deer in the back of my property. Did any of you guys have deer in the back of your property? Probably not. But that's what I'm calling an agricultural area. I'm not calling it a
Mr. Scoggins?
residential subdivision.
You have to keep your testimony to what was brought up in the
Okay,
zoning
all right.
hearing master.
So let me show this other map.
Was that part of your testimony
Yes,
in
it is.
zoning hearing master?
Now
Okay.
this is the map of the 2 subdivisions. One's already been pre-approved without any thought to the citizens, which is right here.
I apologize, but
This is the other one right here that
Mr.
they're
Scoggins,
trying to approve.
your time's up.
Okay, fine. Well, thank you for listening to my concern.
Thank
All I
you.
can say is that
Thank you,
I'm not
sir.
very
Your
happy.
time is up. Thank you. Okay, we now will have the rebuttal from the applicant in 5 minutes.
Thank you, Vin Marchetti, for the record. Let me just state initially that Mr. O'Brien went way beyond what he had testified to at the ZHM. I let him go because we're trying to work with him on other projects as well as the Belém Civic Association, but I want to just mention that for the record, that he went way beyond what he had spoken to before. He did categorize these projects as being, I think, suburban or high density. I think he said high density. Essentially, the projects in Baum is 2.4 units per acre total, and in Riverview equates to 1.68 acres, 1.68 acres per unit, units per acre in total. So obviously not high density. He has this impression. I'm not sure why. We've had very constructive meetings with Bill as well as Mike over the last year on other projects as well, but I want to make sure that's pointed out that he has this misimpression. Let me have Steve Henry talk about transportation. Clark's going to talk about the open space note, and Steve Luce is going to talk about the buffer. Mr. Scoggins.
Good morning. Steve Henry, Links & Associates, 5023 West Laurel. I have been sworn. Just real quick on a couple of the transportation comments that Mr. O'Brien had. One on the overall transportation. As you know, you've adopted mobility fees, and those mobility fees are used to fund the infrastructure for the system. As far as a substandard road, as part of the development process, we will meet with your county staff and address any substandard road from that standpoint and improve them as necessary with the staff. And as far as the intersection of the Baum-Boyette and Baum, there are provisions on the plan. Actually, there are 3 options to look at that intersection and how to configure that intersection based on the development of the property and how the roadway network is done. So that has been looked at and will be addressed as part of the development process. Thank you.
Okay.
Clark Miller, King Engineering, 49.
You've been sworn in?
Yep.
Thank you.
Sorry. In response to Mr. O'Brien's comment regarding the gathering space, the open space or park, the code requires 50 square feet per unit. Will at the very least meet that minimum requirement. So I think that answers his question.
Okay, thank you. And
good morning, Commissioners. Steve Luce, the developer of the property. Hearing Mr. Scroggins' testimony about the buffer adjacent to his property line, currently the buffer requirement or the proposed zoning condition is 50 feet. We are not opposed to doubling that width to 100 feet, and we'd be glad to put a fence as well, a 6-foot tall fence along his property line if that will help him and mitigate his concerns about the proposed development. So double it from 50 feet to 100 feet and a fence along his property line.
okay, fence and double 50 feet.
Buffer to
Okay.
from 50 to 100.
I'll look to staff to make sure that that's proper.
We certainly can accommodate that. We're aware of this issue, and we can accommodate that increased buffer. We're prepared for the site plan and the conditions to address that increase along Mr. Scoggins' property boundary.
Okay, so any action taken here, we need to make sure we include the conditions. Okay, Ms. Marchetti, you have about 2.5 minutes
Yes,
left.
thank you. Vin Marchetti again for the record real quickly. Staff has already talked about their report. It's a very comprehensive analysis of this both projects, if you will. Planning Commission staff hasn't spoken yet, but they've supported, again, both projects as well. We have a lot of competent, substantial evidence in the record supporting the cases. Again, some of the comments made by those in opposition, particularly Mr. O'Brien, are not correct, but we're correcting it for the record. Mr. Scoggins, we want to assist him, but we do meet all land development code requirements. We're consistent and compatible, so we'll go to 100 feet on the buffer and put up a fence for Mr. Scoggins. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we will now move to the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Tony Garcia, Planning Commission staff. The applicant is requesting a transfer of 54 dwelling units between 2 planned villages in the RP2 future land use category. This transfer is permitted per policy 33.2A in the future land use element for unincorporated Hillsborough County. The Rodine Borough Pit donating parcel shall be permitted a maximum of 300 single-family lots. The Grove parcel shall be permitted a maximum of 410 single-family lots. The applicant has requested a waiver of internal commercial for the Grove parcel, citing existing or approved neighborhood commercial within a 1-mile radius of the site. Staff concurs with the request. Staff also concurs with the request for neighborhood specialty retail shown in the site plan at Baum-Boyette and Baum-Boyette roads. The applicant has also requested a waiver to the 250-foot buffer requirement in certain locations. Staff concurs with the buffer waiver and proposed buffer conditions provided by the Development Services Department. This includes a berm and screening with landscape materials. Staff concurs with locations of the village nodes for both parcels. In summary, the requested transfer of dwelling units between the two planned villages are compatible with each of the villages. Based upon the above considerations, Planning Commission staff finds the proposed rezoning consistent with the comprehensive plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now go to the zoning hearing master.
The zoning hearing master considered the requested plan development, which is utilizing comprehensive plan policy 33.2A, which permits projects that are at least 160 acres in size within the RP2 future land use designation and developed in accordance with the plan village requirements to blend densities and transfer densities up to 50% from one area to another. The applicant is requesting a transfer of 54 dwelling units between two planned villages in the RP2 future land use category. The Rodine Borrow Pit donating parcel will be permitted a maximum of 300 single-family lots, and the Grove parcel shall be permitted a maximum of 410 single-family lots. The zoning hearing master considered the waiver request for on-site commercial development for the Grove parcel, consistent with the Land Development Code Section 5.04.02 DA. The zoning hearing master recommended approval of the waiver in accordance with this provision of the Land Development Code. The proposed project meets the intent of the RP2 planned village policies of the comprehensive plan to create a pedestrian-oriented community to complement the low-density development pattern permitted around the RP2 future land use category, not developed in a planned village manner. The zoning hearing master found that the overall request will result in the development that is consistent and compatible with the surrounding development pattern and recommended approval.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll now go into board discussion. Commissioner White, you're recognized.
Thank you. I have a question for staff. So the request is to transfer 54 units, is that correct? And if that transfer is approved, they could get 300 units on the Rodine site and 410 on the Grove site. Did I hear that right? Total of 710? Yes, sir. Okay. And the Rodine site is what's also being referred to as the Borrow Pit site. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. What kind of density could the developer get if the two sites were developed independently?
Independently with two different PDs?
Correct, without the transfer.
The wetland credit application would have to be applied individually on the acreages that are wetland, and the comp plan would address those individually as opposed to combining all the acreage in both sites and the wetlands that are available on those sites. So I don't immediately have an answer for what those percentages would be without going through that calculation, but it may likely be a different result.
Right. I tell you, Planning Commission staff, I'm sorry, it's County Attorney staff use the term intent. I would say that this, meets the requirements of the language of what's in the comprehensive plan. I don't know that it meets the spirit of what's in the comprehensive plan, though, as I understand it. So I'm just not comfortable with the request as it stands. I'll listen to further board discussion. I'm not sure whether to make a motion to deny or to remand and let the zoning hearing master take another look at it, but I do have a level of discomfort with the item as it stands.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Kemp, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also have a very extreme level of discomfort with everything I'm hearing so quickly, and it seems like this is pretty problematic. One thing I wanted to ask about, just one of the small issues that we heard was the buffers, and I see here to avoid incompatibility. This is from I think the zoning hearing master, to avoid incompatibility with adjacent low density development in the RP2 future land use category. planned villages are to provide a buffer of at least 250 feet around at least 70% of the perimeter. Waivers to this requirement may be requested to reduce or eliminate buffers around the development. So can we just clarify here? So 250 feet around 70%. Then I heard 50 feet around part of it. Then I heard a volunteer for 100 feet around a portion of it. I'd just like some clarification on this aspect.
Clarification on the rationale?
Clarification on the actual fact on the ground of what's happening. So if it's 250 feet, around 70% of the perimeter, how much of the perimeter will a waiver cover of that? And, you know, what actual buffer are we going to have around how much of this property?
Trying to match a graphic that we have up on the okay, referring to the, are we talking about the borrow pit site? Or both of them?
No, please, no outbursts from the audience.
I'll start with the Northern PD site. It's, Brian, can you put this up on the Elmo? This wasn't shown until, this is an explanation. Starting on the Northern PD site, it has like a...
Are you going to put something on the Elmo so we can follow this?
We need to refer to the graphic that's in the staff report. Okay. Michelle, why don't you just present what's in the report on the graphic?
Thanks. Michelle Heinrich, Development Services. This is for the Grove parcel, which is the southern PD area. This property line right here along the roadway, that has been reduced to a 50-foot wide buffer with enhanced screening. And that enhanced screening could consist of, it first has to be 6 feet in height, and it can consist of a berm, evergreen shrubs, or a wooden fence. Or alternatively, that screening could be provided with a 6-foot high fence, PVC fence or wall, and a row of evergreen shade trees 10 feet in height and planted on 20-foot centers. And that would apply to this property line right here, this property line along the west, along the south where Mr. Scoggins was speaking, also along here, the western boundary, and along here, adjacent to some homes. This area along the north and east of an existing church, no buffer is proposed in that area because it is a non-residential use, and it also provides mission services. Along the southern boundary here, and along the majority of the eastern boundary, that is adjacent to an existing planned village, which you saw Mr. Smith put up on the Elmo. So that is a compatible development, and it was not felt that the 250-foot compatibility buffer was needed. Be happy to answer any other questions you have.
Okay, Commissioner Kemp, do you have further questions of her?
So this is the, I mean, it seems, so is there any place where there's 250 foot at all, even though that's a requirement for 70%?
No, ma'am.
Okay, and is there any place where there's 150 feet?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so we only have a small requirement for now offered at this hearing for 100 feet for small portions.
Correct. I believe Mr. Luce stated that along here, along Mr. Scoggins' property, they are agreeing to increase that to 100 feet. So the remaining areas have no buffer or a 50-foot wide buffer.
I find that really inadequate.
Okay, are you finished? Okay, Commissioner Hagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have recommendations of approval from the ZHM, recommendation of approval from the Development Services. Planning Commission finds it consistent with the comprehensive plan. We've got an additional buffer condition. So with all that, I'll move ZHM recommendations with the additional buffer.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve by Commissioner Hagan, second by Commissioner Higginbotham. Commissioner White, you're recognized.
Thank you. I'd like to make a substitute motion to remand this item and ask the zoning hearing master to take a look at two issues. One would be the buffering issue, and one would be to run an analysis of the allowable densities on the two sites independently versus what it would be with the site with the transferred rights, and to see if there's some type of a middle ground that can be found.
Okay, we have a substitute motion to remand by Commissioner White, seconded by Commissioner Miller. Is there any further discussion on the motions? I do want to ask the applicant, this is a rezoning issue, right? What's the regular zoning?
AR? AR is the existing zoning.
Okay. And what does that, if you were to just develop it now, what would you do?
Then Marquette, it'd be large lot, single family. It won't develop as that. It's RP2.
You wouldn't develop
planned.
it as is?
No, it would be developed as RP2. I just wanted to make a quick comment. A remand.
Well,
if
you can't
wouldn't
really
mind.
allow it. Sorry. We're just. No. No, I know. I'm sorry. It's just, we're quasi judicial here and we have to follow the process. Commissioner Hagan, you're recognized.
Adam, what's your opinion on a remand or continuance? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I think if the density question is sought to be addressed, that is additional evidence. It's not in the record and really be appropriate to get that in there through a remand. On the buffer, depending on what the board's preference is, buffers could be adjusted by the conditions, but in terms of the density calculation, that will require some additional information to be added to the record. The remand would be an appropriate way to get that into the record.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. I see no more discussion. We have a substitute motion to remand on item G3 by Commissioner White, seconded by Commissioner Miller. Is there any further discussion?
The remand date, sorry, Commissioner.
The remand date,
yes,
August
would be
20th.
August 20th at 6 p.m.
So we'll be back here with both items. Okay, so I'll please record your vote.
Motion carried 6-1. Commissioner Hagan voted no.
Okay, item G4.
Thank you. Item G4 is a major modification, 18-0336, located at 530 Brandon Town Center. Commissioners, this is an item that likely would have been on consent if not for a issue that came up subsequent to the zoning.
I'm sorry. Let's open for oral argument. Motion by Commissioner Miller, seconded by Commissioner White. Please record your vote. Now you can go. Sorry.
This is an item that would likely have been on consent.
Motion carried 6-0.
I'm sorry. I'm moving too quickly.
We're moving too fast.
I think I already got the part that would otherwise be on consent out there. A condition came up related to an access for fire subsequent to the ZHM. And the purpose of the oral argument is to get the condition on that would essentially require an access point for fire purposes that would be controlled by a lockbox. So it would not be an access point that the general public could use. It would only be used if necessary by the fire department or emergency services. And as I said before, it's controlled by a lockbox. The conditions that would implement that component have been passed out, and I believe the applicant can speak to this as necessary. Generally, this is a request to go replace commercial on the site with multifamily, and as I said before, has all approvals that would have otherwise been on consent, but the method to get these revised conditions for the fire piece is through oral argument. Staff is recommending approval with conditions.
Okay, thank you. Is the applicant here?
Sure. Truett Gardner, 400 North Ashland Drive. Joe did a great job of explaining. We basically are converting commercial to multifamily. This is at the Brandon Mall outside the Ring Road. Everything went swimmingly throughout the process, and then my client was going through construction site plan review, and this issue of emergency access came up, and so we have included a condition we've worked with the county on that'll satisfy that and allow them to move forward.
Okay, thank you very much. And you're the only one signed up as party of record, so we can now go to there's no rebuttal, so we just go to Planning Commission staff and zoning hearing master after that.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Tony Garcia, Planning Commission staff. The request is for a major modification to a planned development to split the development into 2 parcels to introduce 300 multifamily units allocated to parcel A. Currently, the PD prior to this modification approves the area that would be designated parcel A for commercial general uses and sits vacant today. Parcel A is 14.4 acres in size. The area to be designated parcel B is currently developed with commercial uses. The RMU 35 and UMU 20 future land use designations are intended for urban regional mixed-use activity centers. Future land use policy 19.1 requires the development of a minimum of 2 land uses on sites meeting defined criteria. Because the subject property is within the RMU 35 and UMU 20 future land use designations and the site is greater than 10 acres, future land use policy 19.1 is applicable. The applicant has shown a mixture of uses on the site plan, including commercial and multifamily uses. The proposed site plan demonstrates connectivity with surrounding parcels and within the site. The internal bikeway connecting State Road 60 with Causeway Boulevard remains with the new site plan. Several comprehensive plan policies support the provision of cross-access and a full pedestrian network to accommodate travel between buildings and residential developments. Pedestrian interconnectivity between any existing and/or proposed structures, such as from the proposed multifamily to the mall, should be planned and provided for to ensure for safe pedestrian movement throughout the project. The proposed modification is located within the urban center character district as described by the Brandon Community Plan and meets the intent and vision for this district. Based upon these above consideration, Planning Commission staff finds the proposed request consistent with the comprehensive plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Zoning hearing master.
The zoning hearing master considered the major modification request and found that the majority of the planned development has been developed as the Westfield Brandon Mall, formerly known as Brandon Town Center, and freestanding commercial structures within the same complex. The subject modification addresses a folio identified on the proposed general site plan as Parcel A located to the east of the Westfield Brandon Mall. Parcel A is currently approved as an area available for an additional 180,000 square feet of commercial and office uses. Under this modification, the commercial entitlements will be removed and a total of 300 multifamily units are proposed. The zoning hearing master found that overall the request will result in development that is comparable and compatible with the surrounding development pattern and recommended approval.
Okay, thank you. Board discussion, motion, action?
Move the item.
Motion by Commissioner White, seconded by Commissioner Miller. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please record your vote.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you all. We're now on H1A and H1B.
Thank you, Commissioners. H1A and H1B are public hearings. These are both really related to DRI 18-0999 and also included that as personal appearance 18-0436, located in rear view at the southern termination of Cross Vine and southeast Climbing Vine Avenue. Essentially what this boils down to is an increase in 40 units. The DRI is proposed to change map H and capture the mitigation for the increase in unit count for transportation by mobility fee. H1B captures the site plan changes necessary for that, along with the development increase of 40 units. Brian Grady of our staff has reviewed both these items as available for comment if needed. Staff is recommending approval of both these items with conditions.
Okay, thank you very much. Applicant, good morning.
Good morning again. William Malloy, 325 South Boulevard. I've been sworn. Essentially, this is hopefully a very de minimis request to really just fill out the residential entitlements for the Summerfield Crossing DRI. This should be the last single-family addition to the entire DRI. The DO that runs with it would, approve the additional entitlements. I'm happy to answer any questions about that.
Okay, thank you very much. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here wishing to speak in favor of item H1A or H1B? Anyone here to speak in opposition to H1A or H1B?
Move the items.
Okay, board discussion. I saw a lady. did you want to speak on, did she want to speak on H1A? Okay. We have a motion approved by Commissioner White, seconded by Commissioner Hagan to approve H1A and H1B. Seeing no further discussion, please record your vote.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you, Commissioners. This brings us to the final item on the agenda, which is item L1. This is a county attorney item, and Johanna Lundgren will speak to this item.
Okay, and just to kind of establish, there is no public comment on this item. This is a staff item coming forward from the county attorney's office, and we will allow the applicant 5 minutes for any information requested from the board. Okay.
Commissioners, thank you, Madam Chair. This is a request pursuant to a section of the Land Development Code that provides for reconsideration of a matter of denial by the Board of County Commissioners, section 10.00.05. And it provides that a petitioner may request on the grounds of mistake, fraud, or misrepresentation, reconsideration of a denial, and it relates to amendments to the LDC text, district regulations, or rezonings. And any request has to be submitted in writing in accordance with a deadline, and is considered by the board as to whether the criteria of mistake, fraud, or misrepresentation has been demonstrated. If the board finds that those criteria have been met, one or more of the criteria have been met, then the board would be able to set the matter for future substantive rehearing, really reconsideration. At that time, the board would be able to reconsider the substance of the matter. And this has been requested with regard to the items petition 17-0921, major mod 17-0923 by the applicant, Mr. Marchetti, who has requested to briefly speak with regard to his request.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Marchetti.
Thank you, Vin Marchetti, for the record. Let me have Jake hand out just a small booklet of material that kind of outlines the request that was submitted by a letter that I submitted to the BOCC June 27th. On the overhead, you'll see the graphic depicting the two parcels that we're going to be talking about. I can move that down a little bit, please. So I'm representing Silver Dollar on this reconsideration request. I'm going to have also speak for a couple of minutes here Sydney Morris, who's the Senior Regional Manager of Equity Lifestyle. She'll speak about the impact, negative impact that the BOCC action on that rezoning application 17-0921 has had since it was denied. The aerial that you see above you there is from 1995. And you'll see the eastern portion, 18 acres roughly on the east there, is where the 3 stands have been since 1992 or 1993. That's a 95 aerial there. The 10 stands just to the west of those have been there obviously the same period of time. I'm not here today to talk about the merits of the rezoning application. We spoke about that last time. I am here to tell you that the BOCC, considering the 10-stand application that was already approved and applying conditions to that, negative conditions relative to hours of operation and noise standards, before considering the case to the east and actually having a month delay between the two, has had a very significant negative impact on my clients' operations on their original parcel, the 58-acre parcel, to the point where, and Sydney will talk about this, they've lost about $700,000 of revenue projected for the year. Most importantly, the ATA events, American Trap Shooting events, that they have on the facility, have had for many, many years, they've had to rescind some of the contracts because they can't operate with 10 stands. They need 13 stands to operate, and also the negative impact of the zoning conditions for hours of operation. They can't get enough players out there, if you will, or shooters out there on the 10 stands to accommodate the events. I think there's been a mistake made by this board at the beginning of the original hearing in May. On May 8th, I specifically asked that the board consider both applications together. The major mod is only really cross-access to the 18-acre parcel. There's nothing else involved with the major mod. The client willingly put conditions on that application of that site. In the event the 18-acre was going to get approved, the 3 stands on the 18-acre. Unfortunately, what happened is we had the debate. The board voted on the 58-acre piece first and added conditions to it, which should not have taken place if you didn't approve the 18-acre piece, so the reverse occurred. Then there was a month delay. Obviously, the 18-acre parcel with the 3 stands was denied, and now we sit here today with conditions that are not appropriate on the major mod site, the 58-acre piece. Let me have Sydney speak for a minute, then I'm going to wrap it up.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Sydney Morris. I'm a Senior Regional Manager with Equity Lifestyle Properties. The address is 5100 West Lemon Street, Tampa, Florida. And as Vin mentioned, I'm here to speak to the hardship that we're incurring and have incurred as a result of the board's denial of the use of those 3 trap stands that we've been using for the past 23 years. On top of that, there was also the restriction that Vin mentioned of the reduced hours of operations and the noise standards. And because of that, we're conservatively estimating a reduction of revenue over the course of a year to be about $700,000. We can't possibly, without the 3 trap stands, we can't have and host our 3 largest events because we can't possibly move all of the competitors through the event in the given amount of time that we have to do that. Because of that, we'll probably lose our contracts with them, and the effect over time could be rather large because we lose our presence and prestige in the shooting world as one of the top largest clubs in the Southeast, and we already dropped from 2nd busiest in the country to the 5th busiest in the country. It also affects our residents. There's over 800 residents who moved to Silver Dollar because they wanted to be able to shoot in these large events, and it affects them, their home ownership, and their ability to use the facilities. Thank you.
Vin Marchetti again for record. Just to wrap up, I'd ask the board vote to reconsider RZ 17-921, direct staff to place that item on the BOCC meeting for November 14th. Our intent would be to also file for a land development code amendment, which is what Johanna said we would have to do to nullify the conditions on the original major modification that was approved by the board. We would also set that up to give us enough time, November 14th. And I would suggest have the PRS application second and the reconsideration of 17-0921 first on the agenda. And we would work with the citizens, as we have all along here, months and months, the community members, the citizens and staff, to try to also better our application in the interim. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Marchetti had just mentioned filing for, he said, a land development code amendment. I just wanted to clarify that personal appearance, that would be modification to the plan development if that was to proceed forward.
The PRS.
Yes.
Okay. We'll now go into board discussion. Commissioner Miller, you're first. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me ask Ms. Longwood a question. The Land Development Code, Section 10.00.05, gives the applicant the opportunity to request a reconsideration if there is fraud, all right, misrepresentation, or a mistake. And I think Mr. Marchetti is saying that we made a mistake. The mistake was made because they weren't taken up in a certain order. Am I hearing him right? Is that what he's filing on?
That seems to be the main argument in his request for reconsideration, that the 2 separate dates of the consideration of the 2 requests somehow resulted in a mistake in the result.
And this mistake, supposedly, that we did by not taking them both at the same time, where this board decided that we would not approve his request, approve the request, now seems to me to be harping on the fact that they feel that they're not getting the proper financial support that they normally would get because of whatever reason, they're not having even tournaments, whatever the case may be. So that's part of the mistake. Is that what I'm hearing?
Mr. Marchetti's request does outline those points.
Okay.
Submitted a letter with that.
I don't think we made a mistake. I think everything was done in order. I think everything was done by the staff. If that mistake would have been made at that point, I think Mr. Marchetti would have brought that up at that particular point in time. To wait till after we've taken the vote, then bring it back, I think that's not the proper way to do it. I have a major concern about this particular section of land development code that I'm going to bring up after this discussion. So I'm going to make a motion that we do not reconsider.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to not reconsider the item before us in discussion, and by Commissioner Miller, seconded by Commissioner Kemp. Next in the queue is Commissioner Hagan. You're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, not surprisingly, I have a difference of opinion. Our decision on today's request is not about the merits of the previous rezoning application. While I believe the request warrants approval, that's not what today's decision is about. This is about the rule of law and, to me, fundamental fairness. By how we have handled this case, I feel very strongly that we have put ourselves in a very weak legal position. The applicant has already initiated legal challenges, and unfortunately I feel that they have a very strong case. I would suggest that regardless of your opinion on the original rezoning, at a minimum, in order to strengthen our case legally, we should approve the reconsideration, to which time we can take up both of the major modification and the rezoning, and at a minimum, we would rescind the approval of the major modification approval because the applicant agreed to several conditions only if the second item were concurrently approved. So even if you voted in denial of the original application and still feel that way, I think we are only strengthening our case legally by accepting the request for a rehearing. So I'm going to make a substitute motion that we grant the rehearing and go through the process that the applicant requested.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Hagan to grant the rehearing on the item that is before us in discussion.
I'll second that for the sake of discussion. I'd like to hear from some of the other commissioners that were on the prevailing side initially.
Okay, seconded by Commissioner White for discussion. Next in the queue is Commissioner Kemp. You're recognized.
Thank you. I would disagree wholeheartedly with Commissioner Hagan's comments as a lawyer also. In fact, I feel like if we proceeded with going forward with this, that we would be causing ourselves to have a weaker legal case and way more difficulty. And in fact, in section 10.00.05 that was cited by Commissioner Miller, it says, mistake, fraud, or misrepresentation, reconsider its denial anytime prior to. A petitioner may request on the grounds of mistake, fraud, or misrepresentation reconsideration of a denial, not approval. There's nothing in the law that allows us to reconsider an approval that I've seen. The applicant is also complaining. I mean, first of all, the statements that we just heard weren't relevant to the matter of record in terms of mistake or misrepresentation or fraud. We heard other kinds of issues just now, but the applicants complaining these matters weren't heard at the same time in the complaint that was made. They were heard together on May 8th. The second was continued due to a tie vote. The applicant could have absolutely proceeded with one application here to include all of this in one PD. It was the applicant's choice to do two applications. The applicant in the record refers to a commissioner changing his vote. No commissioner is required to vote the same way the second time at the continued hearing. That's not a mistake, as long as it's based on competent, substantial evidence. The applicant also seems to argue that that because the one was granted, the rezoning had to be granted. However, from the beginning, there was a distinction between these two. As I said, they could have been put together, they weren't. There was a distinction on MM Major Modification 0923 had been supported by Development Services and found consistent with the comprehensive plan by the Planning Commission. The rezoning 0921 was not supported or recommended. The applicant went in knowing this and made the distinction between the two and presented them. And again, there is no basis for this in terms of when an approval is made, and we made an approval. So I think we would put ourselves in a far weaker legal position if there was any legal challenge to this if we went forward with reconsideration.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Christ, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, in going over this with staff, my staff, and reading through the documents, my name is mentioned in there, having voted differently the second time around. I spoke with no one other than my own staff in between that period of time, so there wasn't anything improper that was conducted there. Did I identify additional evidence? I reevaluated the evidence that was before me and pieced this very difficult puzzle together. And what I saw clearly was a little different picture than when I was sitting here with the emotion of all those speakers in my face and the tension of that time. I was able to come to a conclusion that was logically calculated based on facts and figures on paper in front of me. And would I have voted differently if the order of the two issues was in place? I don't know. You know, but at this time, I understand that the applicant has other avenues that could be followed in order to allow them to conduct their business. I also know that the community is willing to work with the applicant to cultivate those avenues, because I believe of what I've heard since the last meeting is that there's a desire to enable them to do their business, but in a way that isn't disruptive to the community. I want to ask staff, if we don't move forward with this request today, is there anything that stands in the way of Silver Dollar working with the community to bring back a new plan for our consideration?
Aren't they still under the conditions of the Code Enforcement Board? Before you answer that.
Yes, I can't speak to the Code Enforcement Board conditions. Well, I guess I will. My understanding is that those were applying to the 3 stands that were denied, and so I
didn't mean to interrupt.
In terms of working with the community, there's nothing that stands in the way. A resubmittal of a new application to address the conditions on the major modification is something the applicant could pursue. In terms of the denied rezoning application.
That's not where I'm going.
Okay,
I understand that they can't reopen and utilize those 3 stands. That's shut down. That's not allowable. But I'm saying there are other opportunities at their disposal to relocate those 3 stands to either property that they currently own or property that they could work out a lease or a purchase on. Is there anything that would prevent them from immediately entering into those discussions and bring a deal back sooner than later for our consideration?
I'm not aware of anything that would prevent that.
Mr. Marchetti, are you aware of anything that, okay, please explain.
Vin Marchetti, only to the extent if we utilize the same property, we have a 1-year denial. You can't come back for a rezoning application for 1 year, which is why I asked for reconsideration. So we have to wait till June of next year to reapply for something.
Well, I'm not planning on changing my opinion on those three stands on that existing spot where they once were. So if that's what this is all about, that ain't going to change. But if you're willing to sit down and work a deal out with the residents for one of those other two options that are at your availability or your client's availability, then that's a different story.
Yeah, I can just respond by telling you we have a 1-year prohibition to resubmit a rezoning application that entails that same property unless there's a significant change in the application. And the other big concern is we have these operating hours and these conditions on the major modification, which we're going to have to file a personal appearance for, whether it's now or whether it's it's going to come back in November anyway. So my thought was to have them both come back at the same time so you can have a deliberate discussion about the whole thing, because we can't live with these conditions on that 58-acre tract. They were never on the property before. So.
Okay.
And we're still, obviously, we're working with the community. We'll continue to do that, but we have to get this back before the board so we can have some resolution. Thank you.
Are you finished? Mm-hmm. Okay, Commissioner White, you're recognized.
Without getting into any issues involving the merits of the items themselves or anyone potentially changing their votes or anything like that, I will say that I think I heard my colleague state that there may have been some confusion regarding the order of the items as they appeared at that meeting. So with that being the case, my second will stand, and I'll be supporting the substitute motion on the floor.
Who made the statement about the confusion?
I thought I heard.
Oh, did you say?
Commissioner Chris mentioned the order of the items.
No, I mentioned that I got the impression from the discussions here today and some of the things that was said that one of the arguments that Mr. Marchetti put forward was the order of the two items created some confusion, and that maybe the vote would have been different if the order of the two items were reversed. I don't know.
Oh, I see. Okay, thank you. So we do have a definite second on Commissioner Hagan's substitute motion. Commissioner Hagan, you're recognized.
As I mentioned in my earlier remarks, it's about the law, but also fundamental fairness, and that we put upon conditions that there's no way that the applicant can live with. So, question I have for Joanna and for Adam, it seems to me that it makes sense both legally and procedurally if we reconsidered both items together, even if your position, even if someone like Commissioner Chris maintains his position of not moving on the three stands, it appears that there's an opportunity to reach an agreement that's palatable to both sides without having to wait a year. So is there anything from a legal or procedural perspective that that we would not want to take both of these up at the same time and reconsider?
Well, the process that Mr. Marchetti has proposed, which is to allow the board to set reconsideration on the denial of the rezoning, and concurrently he would also file a modification to the plan development for the larger part of the property. That would be, I think, a procedurally acceptable way to proceed if the board is so convinced as to accept reconsideration and set that reconsideration meeting.
Enough said.
Are you done? Okay. Seeing no more members in.
Pardon me? Restate what we're voting on.
Yes. We are on the substitute motion by Commissioner Hagan to allow for the reconsideration. Is that correct, Commissioner Hagan, or do you want to restate your motion? Okay, allow for the reconsideration. It was seconded by Commissioner White. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please record your vote.
Motion failed 3-4. Commissioners Christ, Kemp, Miller, and Merman voted no.
Okay. Okay, we are now on the motion, and I would like to, well, I would like to pass the gavel, and I don't know if I can, okay, so your motion was to deny the reconsideration. I think we'll take on that, and then I'll come back for a new motion after that. So we are now on the motion to deny the reconsideration. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please record your vote.
Motion carried 4-3. Commissioners Hagan, Higginbotham, and White voted no.
Okay, now I would like to pass the gavel and make a motion.
Okay. Make your motion.
I would like to allow what I want to see happen here, and let me just frame this. I want to see the residents and this applicant sit down together and work out the conditions. I'm serious. And you know, I'm done with code board meetings. We have talked too exhaustingly about this. And I think once and for all, you guys need to sit down and get this worked out on what you agree to. So I'm going to make a motion to allow the applicant to apply for is this correct? The modification of the zoning conditions.
Yes, it's actually not something that requires a motion. The applicant could do that immediately without any board action.
Okay,
But
now I won't make a motion.
Can give direction, certainly, to the applicant.
I'm giving you stern direction right now. You guys get together. When it comes back and you guys agree, I'll support it. That's it. And if you want a motion, I'll make one. I'm looking at the applicant. Would you feel better, or are you going to do it? We're fine. We can do it. Yeah, because I know Todd Pressman's there, who represents the citizens, some of them. I think you guys can get this worked out in a good way so that everybody's in agreement.
Commissioner Miller, your name's up in the queue.
Yes, Commissioner Miller, you're recognized. Yes, I am.
I have some concerns about this particular Land Development Code, Section 10.00.05, that allows an applicant to come back and reconsider under mistake, fraud, and misrepresentation. To me, well, let me ask this question: is this part of like an ordinance that we have that allows this?
Yes, sir. It is Section 10.0.05 of the Land Development Code. Yeah, it is an ordinance.
And how antiquated is it?
I believe it's been in place. I mean, Mr. Wormley advises on that.
It's been in place over 20 years.
My concern is this. You have an applicant that comes back and says they want to reconsider, and all the public that had the opportunity before, in any instance, to come forth and speak on this does not know this exists. Hell, some of us didn't even know this existed, okay? So you have an applicant to come back and do this, and to me, it should be that if any reconsideration is going to be brought forth, that should come from a county commissioner who's on the prevailing side to move to reconsider it. But now you're saying an ordinance that is almost 20, 30 years old allows this to happen. And I think that ordinance is outdated, should not be allowed, should not occur at all. So I'm gonna make a motion that our staff research this and bring back a draft ordinance that would either reshape this particular ordinance or do away with it totally. Because I think that this is something that should not be in place the way it is. I think that as has been talked about before up here, we have so many things in the land development code that the public does not understand. We don't understand. And if we're going to do that, we should have a booklet that we can pass out to them. It's probably that thick for the public to understand in layman's terms what this is all about. I think that's not happening. So I would like to have staff in my motion to bring back a draft ordinance that will either modify this in some way or basically repeal it. That's my motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Miller. That's seconded by Commissioner Kemp. I do see members in the queue. We are not on L1 anymore, just so you all know, unless, because we're on future items, basically. Do you all want to speak to Commissioner Miller's item?
I don't.
Commissioner Chris, you recognize?
I'm speaking to future items, being this issue possibly coming back to both of the parties that are here. Mr. Marchetti reached out and tried to get us to reconsider both of those issues. He could always come back and ask us to reconsider one of those issues, and that was the
modification of the zoning.
The modification of the zoning. And, you know, I'm not quite sure what will happen if he does that. So I think that there is motivation on both sides here to try to get a deal cut. If your client, Mr. Marchetti, wants to get 3 stands up, they need to cut a deal. And if the community wants to make sure they go in the right place and the other restrictions remain in place, you're going to need to work with them. Because what you could find out down the road if he brings that back is that those additional restrictions don't stick. So I really think that there's a deal here that can be cut, but both sides have got to realize they got something to gain and lose if they don't.
Yeah, we're there. I know we're there, so I feel good about where we're at. Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Miller, seconded by Commissioner Kemp, to do the staff report on this code change that he's requesting. Is there, Commissioner White, are you after this? Okay, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please record your vote.
Motion carried 5-0.
Okay. Commissioner White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Thank you, Madam Chair. I will make this very brief. Commissioners, we all received an email recently. The sender did not sign the email, but it was from klane57571@aol.com. Commissioner Miller, the sender of the email copied a county employee with a name similar to yours, so you did not receive it, but I had my staff print a copy and deliver it to your office. They sent it to a Linda Miller with the
Yeah, I
county.
don't think your name's, you didn't change your name to Linda, did you?
So Commissioners, I just wanted to discuss that email briefly. In reading the email and also in thinking back to some board member feedback during our budget discussion, I think there was some misunderstanding on my idea to have a financial impact statement on land use items. As we consider whether or not to include a financial impact statement on land use items, I want to make clear a few things. In the examples that I gave during my comments on the idea of including a financial impact statement on land use items, my choices of examples likely weren't the best because they were all transportation related. But to be clear, I'm not talking about transportation concurrency here. And I'm also not asking that an applicant be required to make up the difference of a financial deficiency as a condition of approval. What I am asking for is that this information be included for this board to use as a planning and budgeting tool. I just want to acknowledge that land use decisions affect each and every department in this county. As we grow, county government is impacted in ways that span beyond transportation, and I want to give consideration to these impacts as we make decisions. And to the extent that transportation needs are identified, that the BOCC commit to budget the new revenues resulting from the growth for those needs. By the same token, I'm not necessarily saying that land use items should be denied based on the results of a financial impact statement, although the board could opt to do so if budgetary deficiencies are noted, providing that such a denial does not violate any Florida statutes, including concurrency. On the flip side, there could actually be cases where we identify a need for greater density on residential development, depending on what the facts of the case might be. The request to have this information included on land use agendas is not an affront on the development industry, but rather is an attempt at better planning for providing local government services as we grow. This planning and budgeting tool would allow the board to assure that basic and essential service needs that arise from new growth are funded before we begin the process of appropriating funds that are declared to be surplus funds. So as I prepare to bring an item before the board, formally requesting this agenda format change, I just ask that you have an open mind at such time that comes. But the purpose of this prepared statement, though, was just to make clear that I wasn't talking about transportation concurrency, and unless staff disagrees, I think that there are financial impacts to this county that this board can take a look at, if for no other reason as a planning and budgeting tool, as we look at the impact on decisions that we make on Tuesdays here in the land use meetings.
Well, I do think it's important that what you're doing. You know, I asked for a staff to start doing a checklist with each land use item about 2 or 3 years ago. And it just hasn't come to fruition. I think we all need to pay attention to the infrastructure and the impacts of these developments on infrastructure. We're not saying, I'm not going to change my position on, you know, my approval for infrastructure, but I just want the knowledge. I want to be able to communicate with constituents in the community about what that is. And I think it's just really important. I'd rather see it come back at a actual Board of County Commission meeting with our county administrator, getting his buy-in also to, you know, what you're going to look at. But
I'll definitely bring it to a regular BOCC meeting. I just want this board to be able to budget for the needs and impact that new growth creates.
Well, while we're doing that, let's ask the Planning Commission one more time to come back with their plans for updating the community plans. Got it, Mr. Garcia?
Yes, ma'am.
I really don't. You've been kind of avoiding and disregarding the request. It's just time to do it. Yes, bring the boss in. Yeah, he's busy. Okay, Commissioner Kemp, you're recognized.
I just want to thank you, Commissioner White, for highlighting that again. I'm just kind of shocked that we don't do that, and I'm just wondering if there's some place where there's best practices. It just seems like a basic to me that you look at your costs, and it can be for knowledge, or it can be for saying this isn't what we need to do. So I think it's extremely important that we start to get a serious handle on that, and that it does become part of every item, and that it is really delineated. I'm just wondering if there's some other jurisdictions that are doing that. I've been wanting to get in a financial consultant with some advice for about best practices, but I think this is critically important, and I do think it should come back also, Commissioner Merman, before the full BOCC, and it's critical, I think, that we move there. What I mean is the full BOCC in a BOCC meeting also.
Absolutely. Okay, great. Staff, you have any questions about the request? Got a lot of requests today.
Yes.
Okay, so is there any more business? No? We're adjourned. I'm just going to press the yes button to adjourn.